the government, it's the government, it's the government, the government, it's the government, it's the government, it's the government, government, the government, it's the government, it's the government, the government, it's the government, it's the government, it's the government, government, the government, it's the government, it's the government, the government, it's the government, it's the government, it's the government, government, the government, it's the government, it's the government, the government, it's the government, it's the government, it's the government, government, the government, it's the government, it's the government, the government, it's the government, it's the government, it's the government, government, the government, it's the government, it's the government, the government, it's the government, it's the government, it's the government, government, the government, it's the government, it's the government, the government, it's the government, it's the government, it's the government, government, the government, it's the government, it's the government, the government, it's the government, it's the government, it's the government, government, the government, it's the government, it's the government, the government, it's the government, it's the government, it's the government, government, the government, it's the government, it's the government, the government, it's the government, it's the government, it's the government, government, the government, it's the government, it's the government, the government, it's the government, it's the government, it's the government, government, the government, it's the government, it's the government, the government, it's the government, it's the government, it's the government, government, the government, it's the government, it's the government, the government, it's the government, it's the government, it's the government, government, the government, it's the government, it's the government, the government, it's the government, it's the government, it's the government, government, the government, it's the government, it's the government, the government, it's the government, it's the government, it's the government, government, the government, it's the government, it's the government, the government, it's the government, it's the government, it's the government, government, the government, it's the government, it's the government, the government, it's the government, it's the government, it's the government, government, the government, it's the government, it's the government, the government, it's the government, it's the government, it's the government, government, the government, it's the government, it's the government, the government, it's the government, it's the government, it's the government, government, the government, it's the government, it's the government, the government, it's the government, it's the government, it's the government, government, the government, it's the government, it's the government, the government, it's the government, it's the government, it's the government, government, the government, it's the government, it's the government, the government, it's the government, it's the government, it's the government, government, the government, it's the government, it's the government, the government, it's the government, it's the government, it's the government, government, the government, it's the government, it's the government, the government, it's the government, it's the government, it's the government, government, the government, it's the government, it's the government, the government, it's the government, it's the government, it's the government, government, the government, it's the government, it's the government, the government, it's the government, it's the government, it's the government, government, the government, it's the government, it's the government, the government, it's the government, it's the government, it's the government, the government. Government, the government, it's the government, it's the government, the government, it's the government.
Hello, I'm Jovan Johnson. There were more chaotic scenes outside courthouses across Jamaica on today's final day for motorists to secure a date for the payment of outstanding tickets before the new road traffic law takes effect tomorrow, February 1.
We join the line the Wednesday, one long line, just to get the stamp from the paper, I never get none the Monday, And when we reach up to the desk, a lady tell me that she can't put to the stamp on a Monday paper.
Jamaica has climbed one place to 69th on Transparency International's 2022 Corruption Perception Index. However, the country's score remains 44, which Integrity Commission's Greg Christie says puts Jamaica among the countries with a serious corruption problem. The Jamaica Constabulary Force is investigating a report of rape and robbery allegedly committed by one of its members while on duty in St. Elizabeth on Monday. The policeman and 3 other cops who were on duty with him are in custody. The government is proposing to spend $24.5 billion more this fiscal year, increasing the national budget to $998.2 billion, or almost $1 trillion. Finance Minister Dr. Nigel Clark says the increase accounts for wages and overtime payments, and that the additional expenses will be covered by projected increases in revenue. In sports, Manchester United's Christian Eriksen is set to be out until at least late April after sustaining an ankle injury in his side's FA Cup win over Reading on Saturday. In your currency trading today, $1 was being sold for $154.10, the British pound sterling for $190.52, and the Canadian dollar for $116.84. In your weather forecast, on Wednesday morning, expect isolated showers across north, central and eastern parishes. In the afternoon, expect partly cloudy conditions across most parishes. And that's it for the Gleaner Minute. Remember to follow us on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram, and like, comment and share on YouTube. I'm Jovan Johnson. Hello, I'm Jovan Johnson with Growth Today. Growth Today is the Gleaner Online's weekly feature tracking how the government is trying to achieve its growth promises. In this week's episode, we'll be looking at corruption and the government's push for that 5% GDP growth in 4 years, the 5 in 4. The details after this break.
It's all on the card. JN Visa Gold and Classic credit cards stand out from all other cards. With chip and pin technology for added security, get great savings now.
Corruption. But it's said to be substantial. The economic costs of corruption. The International Monetary Fund, in a paper in May, put the annual cost of bribery at around 1.5 to 2 trillion US dollars. They say the economic costs could even be larger. In Jamaica, it's a big issue. Now, the Economic Growth Council, EGC, which is driving the 5 in 4 target, has recommended reforms in systems from justice to how projects are approved. Prime Minister Andrew Holness told an EGC function last week that the regulatory framework has been built out to address corruption. Now he says it's to increase efficiency.
I think we have built out the framework, the legislative, regulatory and enforcement framework to deal with corruption, and we will literally perfect that by the close of this year when we debate the new bill to create an authority to deal with corruption, which would see a merger of the 3 different authorities that presently exist.
Mr. Holness was responding to a question at the signing of the Declaration of Intent to implement the proposals from the Growth Council. And that's it for this week's edition of Growth Today. I'm Jovan Johnson.
The United States has once again slammed Jamaica for its corruption problem. In its latest International Narcotics Control Strategy report on Jamaica, the U.S. State Department says corruption remains entrenched and widespread in Jamaica. The report also points to historical ties between organized crime leaders and government officials. We have more in this report. The latest International Narcotics Control Strategy report stated that as a matter of policy, the Jamaican government does not encourage or facilitate illegal activity associated with drug trafficking or the laundering of proceeds from illicit drug transactions. It went on to state that Jamaican law penalizes corruption, but in practice, corruption remains entrenched and widespread. It said the judicial system has a poor record of prosecuting corruption cases against law enforcement and government officials. It pointed out that the last time a member of parliament or similarly high-ranking official was tried or convicted on corruption charges was in 1990, when a former Minister of Labour was convicted for diverting money from a farm work program for personal gain. The report published by the U.S. State Department also said corruption at Jamaica's airports and seaports allegedly facilitates the movement of drug shipments across borders, and organized crime leaders have historically had ties to government officials, creating a permissive environment for drug trafficking. The U.S. State Department welcomed the government's decision to table legislation to make the major organized crime and anti-corruption agency MOCA fully independent from the police force to investigate organized crime and official corruption. To increase public and government attention on the need for anti-corruption reforms, the U.S. government said it has provided support to Jamaica through the non-governmental organization National Integrity Action, NIA.
Have you ever wondered what is the cost of corruption to Jamaica?
Teach them! Always make sure the message reach them!
Jamaica continues to pay dearly for corruption, with an estimated 5% of the gross domestic product lost each year to the practice, amounting to millions of dollars. This is a serious indication of the failure of successive administrations to do more than talk about this most egregious of crimes, which saw the nation losing some US $738 million of hard-earned money in 2018 alone. The misuse of public office for private gain is blatant. So is the prevalence of corruption in most, if not all, the government institutions. It is evident that some of the persons who are employed to put an end to corruption have themselves become complicit in the crime. Corruption eats away at our economic growth, gives rise to crime, suffocates productivity, threatens border security, and significantly damages the country's international reputation. It has a disproportionate impact on the most vulnerable, reducing their access to services, including health, education, and justice, and also increases the cost of living. The allegations of cronyism, nepotism, and other governance failures sees 8 of every 10 Jamaicans believing that our public officials are chronically corrupt and that the nation's future is being choked by this cancer, as it is entrenched and widespread. While there is much anecdotal evidence of the effects of this corruption, there is little hard research-driven data on the financial or broader economic cost of corruption in Jamaica. However, in the 16 years in which Transparency International has ranked the country in its annual Corruption Perception Index, Jamaica has averaged a CPI score of only 35 out of 100, where 0 means highly corrupt, and a score of 100 representing the state of being very clean. Jamaica's 2018 CPI was 44. According to Transparency International, a CPI score of under 50 signals prevalent bribery, a lack of punishment for corruption, and public institutions that do not respond to the needs of citizens. To put this into context, only 3 senior public officials have been jailed for corruption in Jamaica since the island became independent nearly 57 years ago. This is a striking phenomenon. Despite promises that have been made by successive administrations to strengthen the country's anti-corruption institutional framework, Jamaicans are yet to see anything of substance that will effectively address the pervasive and endemic corruption that has long afflicted the island. The much heralded and long-awaited Jamaica Integrity Commission Bill that was passed in the House of Representatives on January 31st, 2017 has not done much to advance Jamaica's anti-corruption fight. The costs of corruption are far-reaching And for developing countries like Jamaica, the magnitude of the potential for the adverse socio-economic consequences that corruption portends is substantial. Jamaica has run out of excuses for failing to end corruption, while it continues to erode the quality of life of citizens by diverting public funds away from critical social necessities such as healthcare, education, water, roads, and electricity. Corruption also lends to human rights violations, steals political elections, distorts financial markets, reduces investor confidence, stunts business activity, wipes out jobs, fuels migration, increases the price of goods and services, undermines and destroys confidence in public institutions, and enables organized crime, terrorism, and other threats to human security to flourish. And yes, corruption also kills.
Teach them. Hey, yo, hello. Send the message.
Back, continuing the news. The Executive Director of National Integrity Action, Professor Trevor Monroe, is renewing his call for politicians to oppose improper and corrupt practices among their colleagues. Professor Monroe reiterated the call while speaking at a function on the political culture of democracy in Jamaica this morning. TVJ's Anthony Lugg reports.
Corruption. It's a problem many countries, including Jamaica, has been grappling with for decades. For long, the issue has led many to express little confidence in the police, the judicial system, and even the government. And according to the recent Latin America Public Opinion Project LAPOP 2016-2017 findings, 97% of those surveyed are of the perception that Jamaican politicians are involved in corruption. Executive Director of the National Integrity Action, Professor Trevor Monroe, believes the findings can affect Jamaica's democracy if it's not addressed.
The main challenge that we all face is to reinforce and sustain the positives in relation to Jamaica's combat of corruption and to reduce the negatives. This latter, the negative, is now encouraging, and I wish to associate myself completely with the remarks of Professor Harriot, is encouraging dangerous inclinations amongst the population, particularly related to the continuing manifestation of the connection between high levels of homicide and high levels of corruption.
But in highlighting the challenges, Professor Monroe pointed to the low voter turnout during the last general election, which he says is the lowest in Jamaica's history, as well as the Western Hemisphere.
The obverse of the concern and the support for military takeover is the erosion of the performance of and the perception of the population in the other two major arms of the state.
So with the Latin America Public Opinion Project showing a lack of confidence in politicians, Professor Monroe offered this suggestion.
Politicians of integrity, and there are many of those, not just the 1%, but there are many, shall need to be more resolute in opposing improper and corrupt practices amongst their colleagues. This resistance must show itself immediately and effectively in curbing unacceptable partisan influence on institutions.
Anthony Lugg, TVJ News.
Hello and welcome. Jamaica is sinking deeper and deeper into the abyss of moral, ethical, and political corruption, and this government is knee-deep in it. The Petrojam scandal is just the tip of the iceberg. Many persons' dirty fingers have stuck into the river of oil money over the year. I listened to Nationwide Radio as the station explored the money leak from Petrojam to communities in St. Catherine in the constituency of Minister Andrew Wheatley. And it pains me to have to say, Minister, millions being diverted to community projects that were not applied for, and money approved for projects in one community reportedly spent in another community based on a questionable letter. And worse, when Nationwide went there was nothing to show for the millions approved and dispersed. Question is, in whose pocket is that money? Because it is in someone's pocket and not in their bank account, because you can always follow the money. It is also the case where an agency of a ministry has been instructed to buy 2 coaster buses for distribution in a particular constituency. The agency is cash-strapped and has had to cut back on services, but the permanent secretary already has many questions to answer. Even as Audrey Sewell and Elaine Foster Allen represented the very best of the permanent secretaries, there are others who every day show what should not be done. This is on the heels of the long-running government comedy of Puppy Show, starring the Ministry of National Security and Jamaica House over the contract to supply used cars for the police force. That dear drama can't fix all now. Months after asking, the full list of politically connected consultants have yet to be provided. A list of the pawns was sent out, and it seems that there is a deliberate effort to hide from taxpayers how much we are paying them. And there is this, how dare you ask about that attitude too. The same attitude when I wrote about the 2 Land Rover discoveries in the Prime Minister's fleet. Just like what Prince William and Prince Harry drive at taxpayers' expense in Britain. Despite the Auditor General and Contractor General report over the years, the politically connected earthworms, they still manage to slither in corruption. Just like how no attempts to sanitize Siaga will work, is the same way Petroscam will not blow over just because it's World Cup. Jamaica's kakistocrats are out in large numbers. Make sure you're on the side of right.
Ghana was once the shining star of Africa. Its economy was growing at 8%, the fastest in the world in 2019. This nation of 30 million people was seen as a model of African progress. But in 2022, it all came crashing down. Prices have skyrocketed close to 50%. Thousands have taken to the streets in unprecedented protests that have brought cities to a standstill. So how did Ghana go from economic darling to desperate cost of living crisis virtually overnight? The government blames external factors, COVID, Ukraine, global inflation. But experts and process leaders say years of government mismanagement and overspending set the stage for disaster. President Akufo-Addo insists out-of-control inflation is out of their hands.
Every bullet, every bomb, every shell that hits a target in Ukraine hits our pockets and our economies in Africa.
But is it really just external pressures? Economists argue that excessive spending is the real culprit. Ghana's debt is projected to hit a staggering 99% of GDP by the end of 2023. The local currency, the cedi, has devalued nearly 60% against the US dollar since 2020, driving up import costs. This while government spending has ballooned.
We went on a binge, a borrowing binge. So we borrowed for projects that were consumption. We borrowed for projects that the return, we didn't have a second look at the return on capital. We didn't get value for money because of corruption. And we kept borrowing and borrowing because we were the darling boys of the European market. And then we crashed. Our story is no different from Greece or Argentina or all those countries in the past that have followed the same path.
Now, protest organizers allege the problems run even deeper to systemic government corruption. Stories of ministers amassing millions in unexplained wealth lend credence to these claims. With inflation topping 50% and food costs skyrocketing, everyday Ghanaians are struggling to survive. Demonstrations continue across Ghana in response to the worsening economic conditions. Ghana's deal with the IMF is seen as a lifeline, but citizens want sweeping reforms.
We are here and we will fight. If no one cares, the youth cares. And when the youth cares, then the country must care.
People are being investigated for wrongdoing. By all means, they should carry their cross. But I'm saying that the broader governance structure is working to uplift the good people of this country from poverty, from illness, from suffering. It's all being done.
So is Ghana's story a cautionary tale of mismanagement and squandered potential? Just a few years ago, it was seen as a model for African prosperity. Today, many say it's a country in crisis in desperate need of economic revival. But will it happen?
Boy follows his father, a stonemason, into a graveyard. It's the first time his father has reached out for help, and he's excited to be assisting the man he's idolized his whole life. They proceed to dig a grave, and once finished, his father makes an odd request for the boy to climb down to the bottom of the grave. Thinking it odd, but still wanting to make his father proud, he climbs down into the hole. But then once at the bottom, he watches as his father pulls up the ladder. Not sure exactly what was happening, the boy cries out and begs to be let out of the grave, but to no avail. After a few moments, he goes quiet, listening for a response. But it became clear that his father has gone. Eventually, the boy realizes what he must do, and scrapes and climbs at the earth, until after what felt like an eternity, he reaches the top. A harsh lesson of self-reliance that the stonemason meant to teach his son. And for better or worse, one he would never forget. That boy would go on to become one of the most controversial civil rights leaders in history. A man that would preach a gospel of racial pride and self-reliance to millions, and a man who would urge defiance and separatism in the face of oppression. A man named Marcus Garvey. Thanks so much to CuriosityStream for supporting our discussions of important historical 1887, growing up under two opposing influences. His father, who you saw in the beginning of this episode, who stressed education but was cold-hearted, and his mother, whose kindness and encouragement fostered monumental confidence. Growing up, Garvey encountered racism from his white teachers, and because of restrictions within the Jamaican school system, would be forced to leave school at the age of 14. Then, becoming a printer's apprentice with his uncle Kingston, he learned a trade that taught him the power of the written word, a power he would wield in years to come. At age 23, Marcus traveled to Central America, where he witnessed how colonialism kept black people isolated within certain areas, often living in squalor, while they simultaneously provided the back-breaking labors that kept national economies thriving. And 4 years later, he discovered the book that would act as the final piece in puzzling out his worldview, Booker T. Washington's Up from Slavery. Washington's book, coupled with his previous experiences, inspired his philosophy of black nationalism, and Garvey wanted to unify black people and put an end to their mistreatment worldwide. Then, returning to Jamaica in 1914, he fell in love with another young activist named Amy Ashwood, who he wooed while the couple teamed up to form the Universal Negro Improvement Association. But while the UNIA developed a following, Garvey increasingly made enemies by attacking other black leaders and their integrationist views. And when his lack of business savvy led him to being confronted over financial irregularities, he set sail for America. Upon his arrival, with the help of fellow activist A. Philip Randolph, he set himself up in Harlem, New York. And soon after...
So that's a key name I want you guys to embed in your brains. All right? Let's go back a little bit. Okay.
He would begin activist A. Philip Randolph.
Okay, so A. Philip Randolph, who he met. Remembered his name, A. Philip Randolph. Marcus Garvey wanted to meet A. Philip Randolph for approval, for a stamp of approval amongst the FBA's leadership. Remember that name.
He set himself up in Harlem, New York. And soon after, he would begin traveling and speaking, all the while observing the plight of African Americans. Then in 1917, when East St. Louis erupted into a massive race riot, with white mobs murdering hundreds of blacks, Garvey made a call for violent retaliation, directly contrasting with leaders like W.E.B. Du Bois, whose NAACP opted to hold a silent march in honor of the St. Louis victims. And once again, Garvey's criticism from established black leaders alienated him from integrationists like Du Bois, and even Randolph eventually disavowed him. Only at this
You heard that. Randolph eventually disavowed him. One more time, because we're going to get into that.
him from integrationists like Du Bois, and even Randolph eventually disavowed him. Only at this point, things were a little different, because now he had an ever-growing audience. A fire was burning, and Marcus Garvey had the gasoline. In speeches and newspaper articles for the UNIA paper, The Negro World, he would stress his belief that all blacks must unite globally, and black men should be prepared to meet oppression with force. He also encouraged confidence in black women, stressing that they too should be protected, and that their beauty was a thing to be celebrated. And he reminded black Americans that they were privy to the legacy of Africa, and came from something greater than the deceptive stereotypes white culture had taught them. And he toured this message throughout the U.S., electrifying thousands and establishing new UNIA chapters. With 35 cents, anyone from African descent could join. Garvey also distributed uniforms and titles, and his Garveyites took to the streets during both scheduled and spontaneous marches, and his followers would wait for new issues of his newspaper, hanging on every word. When World War I ended, and it was clear that Europe and America stood poised to take further advantage of Africa's resources through colonialism, Garvey began pushing the idea of Africa for Africans. And the reach of his message extended even further, as black soldiers returned from the war to find their dreams of equality still dashed. Garvey spoke to their frustrations. Meanwhile, the U.S. government began becoming more aware of Marcus Garvey and the power he wielded. So they began an investigation on him, led by none other than J. Edgar Hoover, a man who would eventually go on to become the director of the FBI and the black community's personal boogeyman for decades. Granted, in 1919, he was just a special assistant to the Attorney General, focused on political radicalism. And prior to later events in his career, like his men bugging the hotel rooms of Dr. King, encouraging the rift between Malcolm X and Elijah Muhammad, and sending infiltrators into the Black Panther Party, Hoover cut his teeth investigating Garvey. And once again, Garvey's lack of business savvy would be his undoing. While he'd managed to create businesses with UNIA funds, many of them were mismanaged, since Garvey had a habit of putting ill-equipped loyalists in key positions. And while many of his Harlem-based businesses teetered on the edge of ruin, it would actually be his vision for a cruise ship line that would finally, well, sink him. Months into a stock offering for his Black Star Line, Garvey purchased a 33-year-old coal boat he planned to retrofit into a cruise ship. After some hiccups, the ship made it to Cuba and Costa Rica, but Black Star Line would turn out to be no more than a very expensive symbolic gesture, because Garvey would be betrayed by people Hoover planted inside the UNIA. After gaining his trust, they tricked him into paying 6 times what the ship was worth, and later on, any other boats he acquired would be hobbled by saboteurs, damaging engines and fuel tanks. Yet despite all this, in August of 1920, Garvey's UNIA still hosted a month-long convention held in both Harlem's Liberty Hall and at Madison Square Garden. Thousands of delegates showed up, and Garvey publicly handed out unconventional and even silly-sounding titles. He named himself the Provisional President of Africa, and the delegates created a document titled the Black Declaration of Rights, declaring the UNIA a monarchy in exile that would someday petition the League of Nations to hand over its African colonies. Garvey also sent people to Liberia to begin laying the groundwork for an independent black nation. A homeland he hoped that all black people could eventually settle, though it should be noted that the government of Liberia did not approve.
Hell no.
Some months later, Garvey's forward progress was halted, because in January of 1922, Hoover and the U.S. government finally got him. With the Black Star Line nearly bankrupt, Garvey sent out flyers petitioning new investors with an image of a boat he hadn't yet paid for. But when it was revealed that that image of the unpurchased boat was doctored with the name of poet Phyllis Wheatley etched into the photograph as if it were the name of the ship, that minuscule fact, but when it was out flyers petitioning finally got him. With the Black Star Line nearly bankrupt, Garvey sent out flyers petitioning new investors with an image of a boat he hadn't yet paid for. But when it was revealed that that image of the unpurchased boat was doctored with the name of poet Phyllis Wheatley etched into the photograph as if it were the name of the ship, that minuscule fact gave investors.
Oh my God, are you serious? Is that how you got caught?
investigators the leeway they needed to accuse Garvey of trying to deceive investors. He was charged with mail fraud and arrested. And while out on bail, Garvey made the horrible decision of meeting with the Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan.
That's when you know tethers don't know FBA history. They don't know Adolf's history. They don't know American freedmen history. Number one rule is you don't meet with the Klan. Only a tether would do some shit like that.
Even inviting the man to speak at Garvey's rallies. Given his own championing of the Back to Africa movement, Garvey probably thought it made sense to team up with another segregated championing the Ku Klux Klan out on trying to deceive investors. He was charged with mail investigators the leeway they needed to accuse Garvey of trying to deceive investors. He was charged with mail fraud and arrested. And while out on bail, Garvey made the horrible decision of meeting with the Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan, even inviting the man to speak at Garvey's rallies. Given his own championing of the Back to Africa movement,
He had the Grand Klan Wizard to speak as his keynote guest, to speak at his large audiences. He had the Grand Wizard, hood and all, Confederate flag and all, Nazi symbols and all, speaking at a Garveyite convention. You can't make this up.
the man to speak at Garvey's rallies. Given his own championing of the Back to Africa movement, Garvey probably thought it made sense to team up with another segregationist. But this association simply provided ammunition to his critics in the black community. Then in 1923, Garvey made yet another poor decision to represent himself in court.
He was the first sovereign citizen? I know this fool represented himself. Oh, God.
3. Garvey made yet another poor decision to represent himself in court.
God, he was the first black sovereign citizen. Wow. This is before Noble Drawley. This dude came with the sovereign citizen package. What does polite call it? Correcting his status. Yeah, this dude came with the correction of status mumbo jumbo in court. Wow, in American court. This dude came with the correction of his status mumbo jumbo. Hilarious.
23. Garvey made yet another poor decision to represent himself in court. Convicted and given a 5-year sentence, President Calvin Coolidge pardoned Garvey after only 2.5 years, but only so the government could deport him. He'd received a hero's send-off in New Orleans and a hero's welcome back in Kingston, where he would have 2 sons with his second wife following his divorce of Ashwood. And finally,
That's another thing. This dude get divorced. If FBAs didn't get divorced like that in the 1930s, this guy is wild. Yo, we will marry again when our wife dies. This is that baby mother stuff they brought to America. Close.
Calvin Coolidge pardoned Garvey after only 2.5 years, but only so the government could deport him. He'd received a hero's send after 19. This association simply provided ammunition to his critics in the black community. Then in 1923, Garvey made yet another poor decision to represent himself in court. Convicted and given a 5-year sentence, President Calvin Coolidge pardoned Garvey after only 2.5 years, but only so the government could deport him. He'd received a hero's send-off in New Orleans and a hero's welcome back in Kingston, where he would have 2 sons with his second wife following his divorce of Ashwood. And finally, after suffering a series of strokes, he eventually died in London in 1940 at the age of 52. Ironically, the final stroke was brought on when he'd read a premature obituary that claimed he'd died broke and abandoned by his followers. Garvey's worldview, however, lived on. Malcolm X, himself a son of a murdered UNIA member Earl Little, adopted many Garveyisms. Also, Kwame Nkrumah, who led the Gold Coast to independence from Britain, named Garvey as one of his influences. And back home in Jamaica, he was declared their first national hero and was reinterred at a shrine in their National Heroes Park. Marcus Garvey was a separatist, a grave distinction between himself and the more often discussed civil rights leaders. And while his views, stubbornness, and questionable decisions definitely made him enemies, he was right to fight against the oppression that he saw. And in the end, some of his ideas, just like that young boy in the graveyard so long ago, eventually clawed their way to the surface and helped guide many others in changing the world.
Dude was a scammer. Okay. So remember he met with A. Philip Randolph. Remember Garvey met with A. Philip Randolph. Well, look what W. Du Bois, A. Philip Randolph, and other prominent PAs, professionals, experts. They seen this scammer coming from long ago. That's why you see early in the video they ran him out. Okay, so he really was the first black predator because he preyed on vulnerable, insecure FBAs. Okay, now look at A. Philip Randolph. Look at this.
Instead of reducing immigration to 2% of the 1890 quota, we favor reducing it to nothing. We favor shutting out the Germans from Germany, the Italians from Italy, the Hindus from India, the Chinese from China, and even the Negroes from the West Indies.
You heard that? They didn't want the Negroes from the West Indies over here. They said, this is our country. The Germans stay where you are, hold your own nuts. The Italians hold your own nuts. The Chinese hold your own nuts. And the West Indies hold your own nuts. So when you see tethers, when you hear tethers saying we are so divisive, no, this is 1924. The idea of delineating and getting on code, what it goes as far back as 1924, of course, earlier, but this is a key point. This is during the reign of Garvey. 1924, now we see early in the video, Marcus Garvey wanted, stamp proof A. Philip Randolph. You see what he thought. He said immigration to this country is just a no. Even West Indies, hold your own nuts, fight your own oppression. Good luck.
This country is suffering from immigrant indigestion. It is time to call a halt on this grand rush for American gold.
American gold. You hear these tethers. Oh, I come over here for American opportunity. He said it's time to call a halt on this grand rush for American gold. This is way back in 1924.
Which overfloods the labor market, resulting in lowering the standard of living, race riots, and general social degradation. The excessive immigration is against the interest of the masses of all races and nationalities in the country, both foreign and native.
So when Tariq Nasheed says immigration is terrible, when Dr. Anderson and Tone and these guys say they undermine with these immigration acts, you see prominent black leaders in 1924 said the same thing. Immigration just undermines American period, but of course, FBAs. Okay, so anyway, let's go here now. Let's talk about Garvey. Let's talk about Garvey. All right, we can move on from Garvey and do some real stuff. Okay, so let me just reset this just so we're on the same page. Okay. We can't worry about no rah-rah. Read.
Associated with the magazine The Africa Times and Orient Review, Seven and learned about African cultures and the conditions in which Negroes lived throughout the world. He also spent many hours reading and studying in London's libraries. Booker T. Washington's autobiography, Up from Slavery, profoundly impressed him.
Okay, so he was a fanboy of Booker T. Washington, but he didn't come over and do nothing Booker T. Washington is. Booker T. Washington was hands-on. He was about building stuff, okay, for Foundation Black Americans to buy and level up. Okay, so let's go down. Okay, so let's go. Okay, we can do this right here. Come on, reader. Come on, reader. Come on, reader. So, but I already knew tonight would be a late night. Playoffs is on, and we got other competing channels on. But earlier today, we had 215 live viewers. You did in other channels, so we are there. We did. We just got to get the right time. That's all on this channel. But you know, you know how it is. Okay, Peter's not there, so I'll read. In 1914, Marcus Garvey returned to Jamaica and established the Universal Negro Improvement and Conservation Association and African Communities League, UNIA, with the primary purpose of rehabilitating the Black race. Garvey felt that UNIA's destiny was to gather all peoples of Africa heritage and promote their collective political, economic, and social advancement, as well as their human dignity by achieving the following goals. Now, that sounds great, right? That sounds like, oh, this guy is smart. That's the dumbest idea you could ever come up with. You got 50 something countries in Africa and then they're all speak different languages. You dig? And the islands speaking. Yeah, so let's get into the tea. Okay, so he didn't get far in Jamaica. So this is what he did over here in America, right? So he didn't get far in Jamaica, so he set his attention over in America. So he realized those Jamaicans ain't shit. They ain't got nothing they talking about. So he was interested coming back to America to, you know, execute his goals. Okay, so let me just see where we at. I'm going to touch on specific things. Okay, so let's not waste time. And we ain't gonna cap. We're gonna get the real history of this guy. Okay, so this is Alabama law. This is Alabama law. This ain't nothing that you just Google and we got the sources at the bottom. Okay, it's a very credible website. Okay, let me see what is it for right here. All right, so let me reset this. Okay, I think while now. Okay. So let's start over. Here we are.
With the Black Star Line, Garvey's
Giant
own
Beast,
star rose
Golden
and
Boy,
fell.
Indigenous,
Rather than
MC
providing a
Fact,
financial base for
SMH.
the UNIA, the Black Star Line succeeded in draining the Unia's assets, dragging the organization's other operations under with it. Garvey was forced to sell off property and equipment. Beset by problems, both internal and external, Garvey attempted to keep his fledgling steamship line afloat through the sale of more stock. This sale of stock, or more precisely Garvey's stock solicitation through the mail, led to his arrest, conviction, and eventual deportation for mail fraud.
Mail fraud, because he was passing out flyers through the mail for his stock, his quote unquote stock, for a shit that he didn't even own. Okay. So anyway, let's go with it. Let's go with it. Okay, watch this right here. This is FDA stepped up. FDA seen this guy's scam and called it out in real time in front of them. W Boys and A. Philip Randolph. Okay, I gotta reset this. Okay, no problem. We're good. Page 22. We're good. Ain't no rush. We are in no rush. Here we are, right here. We ain't no rush. We're gonna get this right though. We don't eat bush meat, so we'll get this right.
Garvey's indictment coincided with a
Peace,
vigorous
Velvet Truth.
Garvey Must Go campaign. Spearheaded by several prominent Negro leaders who vehemently opposed Garvey's programs, the attack centered on the allegations that Garvey was a charlatan bent on milking the poor, ignorant masses of Black people. 3-2 Garvey's own mismanagement of the Black Star Line and his overly optimistic declarations of how close the race was to achieving the repatriation of Africa fed the Garvey must go hysteria. Garvey also became the Black media's target for character assassination. 33 W.E.B. Du Bois wrote an article critically evaluating the Black Star Line's finances, questioning the existence of worthless ships, and calling to task the habit of selling passenger tickets on non-existent ships scheduled to sail to Liberia. Du Bois accused Garvey of robbing his investors, dishonesty, a lack of knowledge and experience, and of using the mails in furtherance of a scheme to defraud and conspiring to do so.
That's some heavy
3.
accusations. That's some heavy accusations, dude. Okay, watch this right here. Look at this. Hey. Look at this. We're gonna read out loud first a minute. All right, so let me just reset it. Something like long reader.
In a New York News editorial, Garvey was accused of playing on the prejudice and imagination of Blacks and having seduced from them hundreds of thousands of dollars and squandered it upon self-glorification and visionary projects. The editorial referred to Garvey as a despotic dreamer and a menace to his people and this country, who was not only bankrupting his race but fast leading it to untimely bloodshed and suicide. Additionally, in the white media, Garvey was portrayed as a racial agitator stirring up hatred against whites. 36. Still another major line of attack focused on Garvey's plan to send Black people back to Africa, which was portrayed as a foolish effort to get back to the jungle. A.P. Randolph ridiculed Garvey's scheme of conquering Africa for Negroes, declaring that the Garveyites had neither the brains nor the capital to run a steamship line, much less build an empire.
So you see the same brother, A. Philip Randolph, who Garvey came here to meet in New York, dividing. That same brother seen right through Garvey's scandals. Dude, what are you talking about? You come over here with little education, little experience of our culture, and you're talking about go back to Africa. Hey, none of our prominent leaders were talking about some back to Africa bullshit. We were here knowing we're FBA, knowing that this country is built on our sweat and blood. Ain't about to flee like you just did from Jamaica. No, that's not how we operate. All right, so let's get it. Let's get it real fast. I'm about to stack something all the Americans. Yo, they mad as hell. Yo, the Tethers are mad as hell that their hero is a scammer. Again, this ain't me. Look what I'm reading from. Look, I'm reading from Alabama law. And this ain't me. I'm reading from the University of Alabama. This is not my sports research. Okay, so I got you. Tell me all you want. This ain't my research. Alabama law scholarly comments. All right, this is a whole university, and they're going to lie and put their reputation online, or anybody can just go to school. Stop. It hurts. I get it. But growth doesn't come without hurt. Okay. Okay. So he became a nuisance to black activists and the government, which is unfortunate for him. Okay, watch this right here. Yeah. J. Edgar Hoover called this guy a scammer.
J. Edgar Hoover originally began his observations of Garvey because he was considered an undesirable alien. For in 1919, all aliens were under suspicion as communist infiltrators or sympathizers. Garv EY's speeches were also scrutinized to determine whether he was in violation of the Sedition Acts. 45 after Garvey was determined not to be a communist. The surveillance effort was classified as an effort to gather information on Negro agitation or Negro radicalism, for which the government set up a special investigation section. Point 4 of our ES government agencies regularly investigated black individuals and organizations who spoke out against racial discrimination and injustice. 47. The U.S. government assumed that Garvey's business program was a fraud. Government surveillance reports, discussing the investigation of the Black Star Line, described Garvey as a get-rich-quick.
Yeah, you heard that? They said the U.S. government assumed that Garvey's business program was a fraud. Is this your leader, Tethers? Y'all talk about Tariq Nasheed. You guys be lying on him. You got no paperwork, but we got the paperwork on your leader. Your leader was known as a fraud. He got locked up for fraudulent activities, and he got deported because of that. Okay, your leader was a fraud. Look what it says. It says, describe Garvey as a get rich quick. What's going to say next? Artist. He was lying to black folks. You know how Brother Polite and other folks do. Hey, you buy my little material, it ain't worth a damn. But if you buy this, if you buy black, guarantee you this much on your on return of your investment. So Garvey doing that. But our prominent leaders, such as the Du Bois and A. Philip Randolph, caught that as he was doing it and checked him. Okay, watch this. Watch this. Okay, so let me reset again. I got reset so you can read. Still janky. Bear with me. It's gonna get hot in a second. Just wait. This is the boring part, but let's get over it.
Blacks who opposed Garvey painted him as a con artist, and statements to this effect were made to government agents and black publications.
Know what that mean? We started snitching. So our prominent leaders realized he was a con artist, a scammer, and we told the authority, they'll get rid of him. Why is he even here? Why is this guy still here? He's a fraud. He's never gonna.
Publications. 49. A significant portion of the intelligence on Garvey was gathered by blacks who were either agents, informants, or UNIA infiltrators. 50.
Damn. They had a heat issue. Hmm. Okay, so let's see what we got here. Okay, this is very, very important here. I hope I got a reset. Let's see. Reset stuff is crazy. Yes, I do. Okay. Come on, come on, come on. Where's my reader? All right, look, I got time for that. As a result of this step, J. Edgar Hoover advised the U.S. Shipping Board from whom Garvey had attempted to purchase the ships not to sell anything to Garvey, and forced the shipping board to renege on a contract for sale. These acts greatly undermine the financial integrity of the Black Star Line. Moreover, these acts of sabotage undermine the confidence UNIA members placed in Garvey's vision of regained grace. See? However, an overwhelming majority of the fierce devoted UNIA members will still believe implicitly in martyr leader and something questionably or unquestionably questionably his bitter account of this dishonesty, treachery that caused the downfall of Black Star Line. He's in, just ignored it. Mail fraud trial. Garvey's conviction must be examined in terms of the substantive elements of mail fraud. In order to secure a conviction for mail fraud, the prosecutor had to prove that the defendant had the intent to defraud, had devised a scheme for divisive fraud. The worst. Number 3, make use of the mails in furtherance of this scheme to defraud. Paradoxically, although the government proved this case, the government was not guilty. Okay. Okay, sentence. Just as long as you get sentenced, I'm cool with that. That's true. Okay. Definitely cool garden. Okay, so let's go further. Okay, look, this is the fun right. So where we at? Page 29. Over here. Page 29. Watch this right here.
Therefore, the jury could reasonably conclude that the envelope contained material about the fraudulent steamship line. This count alone convicted Garvey. Garvey was portrayed as a predator, fomenting racial prejudice and preying upon the ignorant masses of Black people. The task of the judicial system was to see that justice was pursued on behalf of those exploited by this tiger. 71 in Benny Dancy, the court found the perfect example of a man who needed protection. Dancy, a Pennsylvania station porter, was in Judge Hoff's words, evidently both emotional and ignorant. 72 Dancy had given the empty envelope to government agents who visited his home, though he could not remember what originally was sent in the envelope or even if he had read the material. 73.
Okay.
Garvey proceeded pro se
No,
ate.
that's it. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Yeah, so yeah, as you can see, Garvey was messed up. What else we got on Garvey? Okay, let's see. Represent himself. I think I have enough, right? Yeah, I think I read enough about this guy. We got it. Now, this is for you guys, okay, and gals that are confused on what Lord Jamar is and what he's not. Some of us are saying he's an FBA. Some of us are saying he's half white. Some of us are saying he is so FBA. Okay, so somebody's saying he's a feather. Okay, so now let him tell who he is from his own mouth, and let's judge him based on what he says. Not judge him off who we think he should be. Okay, and without changing his identity, let's judge him off who he actually is. Genetically. Okay, watch this.
Actually, my father was born in the Bronx and my mother was born in Harlem. Okay, so no. My grandfather was born here in New York. Okay.
Okay, so now he's gonna run down his family tree on the father's side.
It's my great grandfather on my father's side that wasn't born here. Okay.
So his great grandfather on his father's side wasn't born here. So what he doesn't know is that that's the beginning of the tree. Your earliest grandfather is the roots of the tree. Okay. So he just said the roots of this tree did not originate on American soil. They originated somewhere else, and they're trying to replant them in America. It's not gonna work.
People, thank you, JC. Appreciate you.
I appreciate you for being honest. Okay, so now watch this. So now he's going to speak with Mr. Tariq Nasheed on the same thing. This is the clear date. It's 4 years ago. And let's see if Tariq Nasheed is convinced he's FBA or tethered. Look.
How does one know that they're a foundational American? You got to go.
Now, no FBA asked that question. How does one know? Who asked that question?
Somewhere and feel it in your ancestral memory, or because let me just say that I, a few years back, did a like an ancestral search, not through ancestry.com or nothing like this. This is a sister who actually, tries to trace your lineage through documents and all of that type of stuff or whatever. So I had just did on my father's side, right? But in doing all of this, and I'm going to tell you, it traced back to Guyana, right?
Okay, right.
But it's about 4 generations back, right? So anyway, what I was going to say, how does one know
that they're
a foundational American? You got to go somewhere and feel it in your...
Okay, so now he has to tell the question, how does one know who's foundational Black American? Nobody who's actually an FBA person is going to say, how does one know? Because we all know we can trace our family. That's a terrible question.
But in doing all of this, and I'm going to tell you, it traced this side, right? So I had just did on my father's side, right?
Okay, listen, chat. So he did on his father's side the DNA test.
But in doing all of this, and I'm going to tell you, it traced back to Guyana, right?
Yeah, that's a problem. So his father's side traces back to Guyana. So I'm trying to figure out what is FBA's issue with calling him FBA. He's telling you his father's side goes to the Caribbean. It's now the only lifeline is homesteading the mother line. Let's see if he says that.
Yeah, right.
But it's about 4 generations back, right? So anyway, what I was gonna say, how does one know?
Now let's get to the meat and bones.
We can trace back.
My family suffered from redlining and all that type of shit, because I know how you feel about.
Okay, so suffering from redlining, which I'm this cat, but that got nothing to do with being a slave or slave child.
Like Jamaicans that come here right now, this generation, and they're able to get loans. My family didn't go through that. My family didn't get all that when they came here. We lived as regular Black people. So let's talk about that.
Let's talk about that.
All right, so now the tea gonna drop.
That would not, if they came over and they immigrated, because your family came from immigrants. They immigrated over here, and you can trace
Ellis
that.
Island.
Right.
I know the boat.
That's very different.
because you can't get a reparations claim like that. And it's very important to not.
You cannot get a reparations claim like that. Talking about your dad is from Guyana, your mom is from you don't know. That's not gonna happen. You're not getting paid.
Mix it up.
But now keep in mind, this is just my father's side.
I understand that.
We all have two sides now. My mother's side, I ain't traced that yet. That could go straight to a plantation for all I know.
Right.
So we got to
For
take
all
those
you know. So how you think that for all I know?
things into account as well.
Okay,
We can-
so there you have it. He said that my father's side traced back to Guyana. And so he's the rock the Guyanese flag. He said it comes to his mother, he does not. So the mom did not know where, I'm guessing his mom didn't know where her line comes from, right? Which is weird. How does a woman doesn't know, a grown ass woman, she in her 60s, 70s now, how does she not know where her lineage continues from? Okay. So with that being said, so now keep in mind, making the case, he said his dad is from Guyana, right? And his mom, he does not know. So far, the answer we got so far is pointing towards not okay? Because he said he said it. His own mouth, he said it. He's first chance to get a check, he's out of the black community, other shit, and look up what Todd with Fat Joe. He's not embracing his L. The contributions he put in to be canceled. Or potentially, I'm calling you guys to cancel this guy. All right, so now I'm gonna put something else for you. We'll highlight IBM in a second. Give me a second. Do I have any music playing in the background? No, it's not. They can't play that. Oh shit. All right, so you guys got there with me in the silence as I put these clips together. All right, so check this out. Check it out. Okay. All right, so it's gonna be real time. There we go. Check this wacky shit out.
where my where my mother was born. I never knew my father.
Okay.
I grew up in a single black home. We grew up in the projects. My mom didn't know her father. So and I know like we have like some French Creole in our
All right, so Congolese. See, I'm open. I'm unbiased. I'm open to the truth. I want to be wrong, by the way. So what? Just because I provide something to you guys, that doesn't mean it's the end all be all. Like, I accept opposing arguments. So Congo Ali, I'm going to allow you to defend his FBA side. Okay, that's all. I'm not going to interrupt you. So right now, like playing these clips, get your information together. Where you're just gonna flow for about 3 to 5 minutes without any interruption. All right. I'm gonna send a clip to you. I'm sorry. I'm gonna send a link to you, and I'm gonna send a link to you and the phone. So I'm gonna send a clip to you, the phone number to you. You can hop on, and without any interruption, you could bring a good case to show how he's FBA. Whatever I'm missing, you can include. Is that fair?
family. We have some Indian in our family, but other than that, like, I don't know if we came from, I don't know my tribe, if I came from Africa. Like, so all I know is America. I grew up in the hood in the project, so I'm trying to.
Now, your mother's mother, where's she from? Your grandmother, where's your mother's mother?
From the projects in Sacramento, California.
Okay. So, and how old are you? You're in your 30s?
Nah, I'm 47.
47, okay.
So he's 47. So this is another old nigga like Lord Jamar who doesn't know where their mother comes from. Okay, I'm trying to build an argument. This is a tether problem. This is not an FBA problem where we don't know who our mother is on our mother's side. So this is people who are cosplaying to act like the FBA, and to do that, they got denied or act like they know information on their mother's side of the tree. Listen.
So that means your grandmother lived in the projects in the 70s, right?
Right.
Okay, how did she get to Sacramento? She either came.
See, it gets cut off. I don't know. It gets cut off like I don't really know my family history like all in depth, but I just know like the basics, if that makes sense.
Okay, did you meet your grandmother?
Yeah, I met her. She was she was real like I was really young, so I really didn't really like have a conversation or remember the conversation with her, but I've met her before. I have pictures with her.
Okay. And you don't know where she's from? Shit.
Man, I know that's weird that you say that, but I'm thinking the farthest that I can go back from my family, because we're all my family that I know is from like Sacramento, California.
So that means
So
never had no family reunions?
Man, not recently. So it's just like we're just scattered.
Yeah, and kind of weird to not know where your grandmother is from because she's not from Sacramento. She had to come from somewhere, either immigrated from another country or came from the South. If she's black, right?
Right. And I don't have no families from no other country. Like, I don't have no like, this is my African side of the family. Like, all my family is black folk.
Okay. Because I can understand that you don't know your dad. That's one thing. And your mom.
So look at how confusing this is. Even Tariq Nasheed, like, okay, if you don't know your dad, that's one thing because mama's baby, daddy's maybe. But dude, you don't know your mother lineage. Like that's kind of just hard to believe. And as you can see, it's coming from tethers in question. Tethers in question is coming from.
Your mom didn't tell you where your grandmother was from? Your mom didn't say shit?
Yeah, my mom is passed, but like,
Yo, look how hard and complicated he making this be.
I'm thinking we probably might be from Louisiana. I'm thinking that's what I'm getting, just from past just conversations with family, but that's where we're at.
Okay.
So that's why I just wanted to know, like, what was the stipulations become or the standard for being a foundational Black American? I just wanted to
Well,
get
you need to know your mother's side.
some information and clarity.
Okay, first of all you have to do is just find out where your parents are from and where your grandparents are from. Your
Right. It
grandmother,
cannot be that difficult.
if you knew your grandmother has a birth certificate, brother. Look at the birth certificate and see where she was born. And then see what her mother and father's name was. It's on the birth certificate. And then see where they were born. You trace it back like that. And if you can go all the way back to the 1870 census, that make you a foundational Black American. All you got to do is just trace the parents back. That's all it is. And slavery wasn't that long ago.
Right. They made it so difficult.
So that right there, people know where their family is from, dude. You don't really got just tell your mom, ask your mom where your family is from. She'll tell you if you don't know your father, she'll kind of give you some
It's
history
not
about that.
difficult.
It's not hard to do.
Yeah.
A lot of these dudes just call up and say, "Oh, I don't know." No, dude, your mom know where your she know if she slept with a foreigner or not. She know
Yeah.
that. Like we need to stop that whole argument. But I want to say this too, Flex, before you get off.
Okay, so again, I mean, you see how Tariq Nasheed is like, dude, stop. You see how I'm like, dude, stop. You see how I call her like, dude, stop. Why y'all making it? Again, these are tethers in question. They make it so difficult to find their mother side, never their father side. They make it difficult to find their mother side. These are red flags. Okay, these are red flags for people who trying to hop on the lineage who ain't a part of it. And these red flags, unfortunately, follows Lord Jamar as well. Lord Jamar know where his father is from, Guyana. But all of a sudden, he goes blank when it comes to his mom. He said, I do not know. I haven't traced my mom's side. Why? Wait, why do you have to trace your mom's side? Just ask your mom. Hey, mom, what are you? Well, I don't know. Okay, what is grandma? I don't know. Well, what's great grandmother? A tether. Okay, just say that, mom. Some Guyanese. That's all he had to do. Okay, that's all he had to do. Just be honest. We just want y'all to be honest. You don't have to be FBA to support us. You can be a supporter. You can be a non-FBA supporter, and we'll rock with you. Actually, we respect you because you're being honest. You're not cosplaying. You're not. You dig doing the most. Okay, now watch this right here. We got some more mama drama.
Y'all talking about now? Links. What part of town? Where in the country do you live? Where in America do you live?
I'm originally from Miami, but moved to Seattle to work
You're
in tech
from Miami.
for 24
So that
years.
means you're either Jamaican or Haitian. Which one?
No, but Bahamian originally, half New
Okay.
York, half great granddaddy from Bahamas and mama's from New York.
Your mom's from New York.
Post slavery.
Oh.
Yeah.
By way of what? Another Caribbean place?
Augusta, and then we kind of lost track through the census, but yeah, probably back to the plantation.
No, because he was from New York. Y'all would know who the southern side of her family was. So if y'all don't know, that means she's from the Caribbean.
I said Augusta.
Oh, so your mother's from Augusta originally? Y'all talking about now? Links. What part of town? Where in the country do you live? Where in America do you live?
I'm originally from Miami, but moved to Seattle to work
You're
in tech
from Miami.
for 24
So that
years.
means you're either Jamaican or Haitian. Which one?
No,
but Bahamian originally, half New
Okay.
York, half great granddaddy from Bahamas and mama's from New York.
Your mom's from New York.
Post slavery.
Oh.
Yeah.
By way of what? Another Caribbean place?
Augusta, and then we kind of lost track through the census, but yeah, probably back to the plantation.
No, because he was from New York. Y'all would know who the southern side of her family
right.
was.
It's not
So
that
if y'all
hard.
don't know, that means she's from the Caribbean family.
Okay.
He was from New
Now,
York.
okay. So Tariq Nasheed conclusion the same as mine. It's like, dude, if it's that hard, like you giving Caribbean vibes, and it's okay because we accept support for Caribbean. We haven't got any yet thus far. But if one Caribbean person, if one, 'cause we know it ain't gonna be more than one, if one Caribbean person wants to support what we got going, FBAs, we welcome you. We're gonna monitor you, but we welcome you. I haven't met one yet, but I'm optimistic. If one continental African want to support us, what we doing with FBA, we welcome you. I personally don't believe there's gonna be one of each. My goal 2025 is to see if there's one Caribbean and one continental African that supports FBA 100% without capping. and some secret, motive. Okay. So, anyway, it's for me, it's easy, right? For Tariq Nasheed, it's easy. And for some of you smart guys, it's easy. It's not that difficult to know where your mom come from. Okay, we know that tethers be hiding in their background, lying about their age, all type of shit. So when you start to get this, I don't know where my mom came from. I'm good, dude. Go away, man. Go away.
New York, y'all would know who the southern side of her family was. So if y'all don't know, that means um, she's from the Caribbean.
So he just said it. So Tariq Nasheed conclusion is like mine. Dude, if you don't know where your mom is from, dude, she's from the Caribbean. And if that's true for Lord Jamar, then we got his dad from the Caribbean and we got his mom from the Caribbean. So, dude, you're not FBA, but we appreciate the support that you give us sometimes. Because you don't do it all the time. Because on the Godfrey show, you ain't talk about NBA, you talk about flat Earth. So that's what I'm saying. We know that's like a red flag, dude. If you're FBA, you proud of it. You wear it on your chest, and everywhere you go, you want to promote that. You want the world to know that because we're trying to signal boost a message where we can get some shit done in our favor.
I said Augusta.
Oh, so your mother's from Augusta originally? What y'all talking about now?
All
Links.
right, and watch this. This is the second part.
Yeah, great grandma's from New York.
Okay. All right. Well, all right. Thank you so much. All right. Okay. Some of these folks, you don't know where your mama's really from. Okay. Like my mom's from New York. We kind of
Look at Tariq's issue with the mama thing. So when he heard Lord Jamar do that, he like, oh my God, not you.
lost. And then, okay. Well, folks, okay. I don't know how y'all don't be knowing where your mama from.
What happened? Tariq said, I don't know how y'all be not knowing your mama from. I feel the same way, and most genuine, ride or die FBAs feel the same way. It's like, dude, where's your mother from, my boy?
And you don't know your mama's side of the family, at least I can understand the dad's side might be a little sketchy, but you don't know your mama's side of the family? See, that raises red flags.
That raises red flags, not just for him, but for Lord Jamar as well. Dude, you don't know your mama from? Lord Jamar is 60 something years old. And he don't know where his mama's from, dude. Come on, man. What did your mama cook when you was growing up? What music did she dance to when you was growing up? And Dick, what clothes she wear when you was growing up? Did she have a green dress with a orange fucking top with yellow shoes? Then she's from the Caribbean.
That raises a lot of red flags from folks don't be knowing what
Did
they
your house smell like spices 24/7? Then she's from the Caribbean, bro. If your house smell like curry 24/7 and the guy in your school clothes and they tease you at school, your mom is from the Caribbean.
mama's side of the family is. You know how y'all don't be knowing where your mama from. And you don't know your mama's side of the family, at least I can understand the dad's side might be a little sketchy, but you don't know your mama's side of the family?
Weird.
See, that raises red flags. That raises a lot of red flags from folks don't be knowing what their mama's side of the family is. All right. That's weird.
Right. And that's weird for Lord Jamar as well. Not just, oh boy. Weird is weird, man. We're not a respected person. We don't, oh Lord Jamar, he's a celebrity, hip hop legend. So let's give him a pass. Nobody gets passes, man. Like we take this lineage shit serious. And we take it serious. Now for tethers who always talk about tethers and trolls, who always talk about FBA, that's a new term. Oh, you can't use that. That's a new term. All right, so listen to Tariq Nasheed because he had one of those tethers call in with the whole new term, talking point.
You just
Tether, FBA. He did not. He did. A lot of African Americans did not used to use those terms.
Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. They're still foundational Black Americans. Whatever term you used, hell, back in those days we used Negro, colored. We used all types of terms, but they're still foundational Black Americans. Back in the day, they didn't use African American. My grandmother never ever in her life used the term African American, but she would be considered an African American based on today's terms.
Right, Brother Reggie.
Sometimes terminologies change for the same group of people. We're the same group of people. Foundational Black Americans, we've been here. The term.
Right, the term is irrelevant, man. We could call ourselves seashells. We could call ourselves coins. You dig? Doesn't matter, man. As long as we on code with the term, and that's what we want to be called, that's what it is. All right. So anyway, let's talk about ethnogenesis, right? We hear Tariq Nasheed says it. He explains it sometimes. Sometimes, you might hear it and don't know what it is. So this is going to explain what an ethnogenesis is, okay? So basically, a spoiler, an ethnogenesis is something that the Black diaspora encounter and experience, okay? Which makes us ethnically different. Ethnogenesis, ethnically different.
I'm African American, right? Okay. So my group's ethnogenesis happened through merger, okay? There was a whole bunch of African ethnic groups that were shipped over in the slave trade. Different ones, honey, okay? Different ones. Shipped over. Whole bunch. Guess what? We formed one single ethnic group. That's called the merger. Okay? A merger. We all came together. We converged at a certain point. A couple points, actually. We converged. Okay? And we all just became one single ethnic group. Despite having several different ethnic groups inside of us. I'm African American, right? Okay. So my group's ethnogenesis happened through merger, okay? There was a one. We didn't distinguish from one another. We became one. That's how the history unfolded for us. That's how history unfolded for anyone who got on that slave ship. It ended up in America. And ended up in Jamaica. It ended up in Haiti. It ended up in Brazil. Okay? That's what happened. That's why if you take our DNA samples, you will see not one area or country, which they weren't countries back then, or one region. You will see loads of different regions in us, because we all became one in the United States. They became one in Jamaica. They became one in Haiti. They became one in Brazil. They become one in Mexico. Because over time, it was not over a day, it wasn't over a month, it wasn't even over 1 year. It was over time. We had a lot of time, okay? African Americans had a lot of time. And guess what happened? Culture. We developed our very own. Just like in Jamaica, they developed their very own. Haiti, their very own. Transformation of that single ethnic group. That's ethnogenesis. Boom! We were unlike any of our ancestors' single ethnic groups that made us up. We converged. That's what happened. Because over time.
Okay, so does that make absolute sense to you guys? It should. Okay, so as a result of that, you'll have You have Jamaicans who don't call themselves African Jamaican. You have people from Barbados who don't say, hey, I'm African Barbadian. You don't have people from Singapore who says I'm African. They just say I'm Singapore. I'm from Barbados. Trinidad, Tobago. It's not called Africa or African Trinidad of Tobago. Okay. Uh, and even Brazil. It's not called African Brazil, just Brazil. They say I'm Brazilian. All right. And Haiti, right? It's not called African Haiti. And the people who live there do not say I'm African Haitian. They all understood that they went through an ethnogenesis. So they just plainly say Trinidad and Tobago, St. Croix, Barbados, Jamaica, Haiti, Panama, Panamanian. Nobody uses the word Africa to describe themselves. Okay. Nobody does that in the diaspora. They just say who they believe they are from ethno from ethnogenesis. You dig? So now, when we decide to omit the word Africa or African, and we just like to say, well, actually, we take the word African out and we put black instead, black American, but that's not enough. That's not exclusive enough. That's not tight enough. So what we do is we say foundational Black American or uh, ADOS or American freedmen or emancipated persons. We use these terms to exclude any other persons from how we want to be identified exclusively, no different than Trinidad and Tobago. If you say that, that excludes people who call themselves Jamaicans. If you say I'm Trinidad and Tobago, you exclude anybody who calls themselves Haitians, St. Croix, Barbados, America, Mexico, Argentina. You get my point? You exclude it. So nobody can hop on what you got. So FBAs, our term is so loose, it's been applied to other ethnical groups, other countries and people and persons. So we like, well, why is our term so all inclusive while everybody else's is all exclusive? So we got smart. Tone, Tariq, Dr. Claude Anderson got smart. Leonard Walker, they got smart. They said, yo, let's have a name for ourselves where it is exclusive just for ourselves and it excludes everybody else that calls themselves something from the Caribbean, something from the continent Africa. Okay. And when we do that, the world is up in arms, especially the Black world, which is interesting. So it's like they want us to be like open borders while their borders are closed. We gotta forever open our borders. Okay, so while we on that, let me give you this right here. So just give me a second. I'm gonna touch on a few things down the line. So so he said, okay, so like I said, what I do is I give information. Am I the end all be all? No. I'm open to oppositional information. I'm open to people who have a different experience. So the United States of Africa TV, I want to provide the link to you or the phone number. You let me know which one you want. I want to hear you out because I'm trying to read the chat, but it's hard to read the chat when I'm, talking on the live. So let me, because it's kind of like killing me to look to the right to read the chat. So, but I don't want to ignore you as though your words don't matter. So I'd rather just send you the link and let you, express your information. And I won't cut you off as long as you are brief. Don't take more than 35 seconds. Land your plane in 35 seconds. It's all good. So now I'm going to put the phone number option there as well. And this is for anybody who feel like I'm not all the way accurate and you have some more information that needs to be expressed. Okay, so this is for African TV. I'm a friendly guy. I don't believe Africa is our enemy. You dig? Okay. So I got the link there for you, brother and or sister, and I got the phone number and access code there for you. If you like to join and explain what you're trying to communicate to me. Yeah, I appreciate that. All right. Like I said, I can't keep looking towards the right. I gotta go on with my information. Okay. So now I'm hearing a lot of stuff. I'm hearing that it doesn't that Caribbeans or African people who immigrated here from their place of origin and they came here during the Jim Crow time, right? I'm hearing that, you know, you suffer redlining, basically everything we suffer as FBAs, so to speak. And I find that disturbing because I'm like, well, to say that, that means you don't know American history, let alone African American history. It's like, yo, what makes you believe that you suffered the things we suffered just because a sprinkle of you guys came here in the early Jim Crow period or you know, middle Jim Crow period? I find that very offensive because again, like we look at that as you're trying to tether yourself to our experiences. Okay. So allow me to um, explain the difference from Jim Crow North and Jim Crow South. Because you guys, when you came over here, right, you didn't come to the Deep South, the racist South. 97% of FBAs, that's almost all of us. We're in the South. So you guys, when you come over here, if you're not lying, if you came over here, you came to the North. You don't think you don't think that that's interesting that we're in the South facing Southern racism? You think coming into the North is the same experience as we had in the South? Okay, so we find that disrespectful, right? And I'm going to explain in a second the difference between Northern Jim Crow and Southern Jim Crow, if you don't mind. Okay. Okay. So the question is, where did Africa TV go? He said that I wasn't accurate with my information. So I extended a brotherly sister. I don't know, it might be a sister, but I extended a brotherly olive branch, computer link, and a phone number to Africa TV to like, hey, brother, hey, sister, where you think I'm wrong at, please come and give us the information we can adopt. You dig? But once I sent the link and phone number, Africa TV became a magician. My man just vanished. Anyway, the question is, how did segregation differ between the North and the South? 'Cause I'm hearing a lot of Black immigrants say they were here during the Jim Crow era, so therefore they experienced what we experienced. So we're on one accord. Okay. When you Google this, how does segregation differ between the North and the South? Listen to what you guys don't understand. Because I don't know what you experienced in the North. We were in the South. You should have came to the South. All right. If you want to know what Jim Crow is, you come to the South. You don't go to the North. Again, 97% of ADOS, FBA, American Freedmen, were in the South. So when you came to the North, who were you there with? Because we weren't there.
We were not there with you. So again, we have different experiences. You're in the North, we're in the South. Why'd you come to the South? Here's the big difference between Northern Jim Crow and Southern Jim Crow. Listen and write this down. Write this down. Everybody, write this down. It's important because you're going to hear this talking point when you're trying to uplift and express FBA and what we're trying to do. People are going to come, trolls are going to come around. They're going to talk about these things. So just note this. While they were in the North with quote unquote Jim Crow, look what they did not experience. Okay. Okay. Let me get you back to the thumbnail. Okay. So how did, so you probably read it. I didn't want y'all to read it. Okay. So how did segregation differ between the North and the South? Segregation was not mandated by law in the northern states. That's the difference. You dig? So if you were doing something that was quote unquote Jim Crow, it wasn't enforced automatically. Somebody could just let you just do it. So if you were drinking from a water fountain that said whites only, it wasn't mandated. So it was like, all right, okay. So somebody had to go out their way to like make it a big deal, like a Karen or a Dylan, a Brady type guy. But it was not mandated. That's the difference between the North. That's the main difference between the North and the South. Those Jim Crow laws were not mandated. In the South, it had to be what it was. If it said racial discrimination, racial segregation, black folks are not equal to white folks at all, no level, it had to be that. They did not allow white folks to let these things slide. Okay? They had to enforce Jim Crow laws in the South. They had no choice. But a de facto system grew from 4 schools in which nearly all black students attended schools that were nearly all black. In the South, white schools had only white pupils and teachers, while black schools had only black teachers and black students. Okay. So again, it was not mandated in the North. The northern and southern states had become less and less alike, socially, economically, and politically. Okay, you hear that? The states were not alike, socially, economically, and politically. The North had become increasingly industrial and commercial, while the South had remained largely agricultural. So while we're in the South doing agricultural work, you're up north in the industrial industry, the commercial industry. You're experiencing a whole different America from us. More important than these differences, however, was African American slavery. You guys had no idea the nightmare that we were experiencing. But you come over here talking shit and try to project your northern experiences over our southern experiences. Okay. So North versus South. In general, the conditions of slavery in the northern colonies where slaves were engaged more in non-agriculture pursuits. Okay, so look what the Northerns were not doing: mining, maritime, and domestic work. They were less severe and less harsh than in Southern colonies where most were used on plantations. So the fact is, you did not experience the harsh conditions as us in the South. You're disrespectful and inconsiderate. Here's a question. How was segregation in the North different from the South? See, the North was separated geographically while the South was separated legally. You see, the law stays with the South. Now, once the legal barriers in the South came down, people were fairly comfortable together. But while it was up, it was up. Why did the South hate the North? It had many causes. but there were two main issues that split the nation. First was the issue of slavery, and second was the balance of power in federal government. Okay, so slavery, the South wanted slavery, and the North was trying to abolish it. The South didn't want no federal government power like that. The North did. Okay, so the North was, as you can see, less harsh than the South. All right, so now, so don't let these cosplayers tell you we experienced redlining, we experienced Jim Crow. Yeah, but it wasn't the same because you also didn't, because it wasn't mandated. So it was like maybe, maybe not. You experience these things, but for us, it was guaranteed. They wanted to enforce this law because they wanted to establish a racial superiority type white supremacy. They wanted to establish a thorough system of white supremacy. Okay, that's why it had to be done in their minds. All right. Okay, that's why it had to be done in their minds. Right. So now let's move on. Let's move on. Let's move on. Let's move on. What else do we have out here? What is in the pot to keep cooking on? I wrote some stuff down, but of course, like me, I always leave, like, you write stuff down to go to the supermarket. You get there and the notes are still on the kitchen table. It's like, oh my God, what am I doing? Okay, so that's what it happened just now. My notes are somewhere else in the other room. Okay, so let's see. Let's go to my clips. Let's go to my clips. All right, okay. What am I gonna oh, okay. I know I'm gonna touch on. I know what I'm gonna touch on. Actually, okay, so a lot of these black immigrants, they come over here and they disrespect this great country. Okay. And these guys, so now I already played a video of Ghana, why Ghana is a shithole. So now I'm gonna play a video of why Somalia is a shithole. Because you got a lot of Somalians that come over here talking shit. Okay. So now let's find out why Somalia is still a shithole in 2025. Y'all ready?
With extremely high levels of poverty, one whose government is barely existent, and notably
Slow down. Matter of fact, let me slow this down. You talking a little too fast, my boy.
Somalia is a name which has unfortunately become synonymous with failed state.
Okay, is this on Bias Sports saying that? He says Somalia unfortunately became synonymous with the phrase failed state. I'll speed it back up. Say on Bias Sports, Somalia. So when Tariq Nasheed says your failed homeland, y'all look at that as, oh, he's being harsh, he's unsympathetic, unempathetic. No, he's being honest. So when being honest is offensive, you are on the wrong side of history. So as I quote K. Dot, Kendrick Lamar, don't tell lies about us, and we won't tell truth about you. Truths about you. Somalia has become synonymous with the term a failed state. That's a truth. You should not be offended. But then you guys will come over here and recite truths that you believe exist in FBA culture and you expect us to accept it and take it on the chin.
Somalia is a name which has unfortunately become synonymous with failed state. It's a nation with extremely high levels of poverty, one whose government is barely existent, and notably it's a country racked with violence. But how did this come to be? Why did Somalia fail? So, as of 1945, Somalia, like most of Africa, was under European control. It was divided into two areas, British Somaliland in the north and Somalia to the south and east. This was also run by Britain at this point, who had taken it from Italy in the Second World War. Now, Britain's first instinct was to ask the brand new UN, maybe we could keep it, but the Somali people were pretty sick of Europeans and the UN said no. And thus, it was run by the British, who allowed for the establishment of political parties, and under orders from the UN, it was passed back to Italy in 1950, on the sole condition that they give it independence within 10 years. And
so they playing ping pong with this country.
In 1960, both the British and Italian Somalilands were given independence, and very soon afterwards they united into the Somali Republic. At first, the Republic functioned well. The people of Somalia had free elections, freedom of speech, and the economy was growing. However, there were two major issues which plagued the Somali Republic. The first was that politics was dominated by the deeply entrenched clan system, and as a result became fairly partisan. And the second was the idea of Greater Somalia. These lands were home to some and often a majority Somali population, and many in government were divided on whether or not to push for territorial expansion or to simply let things lie. This question wouldn't get answered anytime soon, since this was
They were filibustering and not getting things done.
The Cold War, and 1969 meant that it was time for a communist revolution. A man called Mohammed Siad Barre, with the help of some of the army, seized control of the country and began to implement wide-sweeping reforms. Things were going pretty well, right? Well, yes, except for the fact that Barre had a clever idea in 1977. Let's invade Ethiopia, specifically to gain this region called the Ogaden and incorporate it and the Somalis living there into Somalia proper. And
so, like again, these guys are tribal as hell. Let's invade Ethiopia. Oh my God.
With the help of the USSR, it would be simple. Or at least
with the help of the white man. Let's invade Ethiopia with the help of the white man. But these guys come over here talking shit. Oh, the white man did this, the white man did that. Dude, you just linked up with the Soviet Union to invade Ethiopia. You guys got to remember this stuff. So when they talk that shit, you like, yo, are you serious?
That it would have been, barring the fact that the Soviet Union didn't approve and so aided Ethiopia along with a large number of Cuban troops. The war went poorly for Somalia, and by 1978 it had lost, and many Somalis living in eastern Ethiopia fled for Somalia.
But they lost even with the European powers helping them. Wow.
Within the space of a year, Somalia's population went from just under 4 million to over 5 million. And as you'll have guessed, this caused issues with infrastructure and food supply, and the national humiliation of losing a war caused major discontent in
Okay, so, AKA, you guys are on this old Noah's Ark shit, and this happens with a lot of black people. You guys think a lot of people means you're going to rule the world. No, because you talk about the small hats who make up a small percentage and they rule the world. So stop. Which one is it? Do you need a lot of people to rule the world, or do you need a solid 300 that's on code, that won't wither, that'll die for this? Like RJ F. Williams. Do you need a whole bunch? Do you need 300 RJ F. Williams? Or do you need 1 million Nick Fuentes? You dig? Like, come on, it's the number game is bull. And in these poor countries, the number games work against you because you don't have money to feed these damn kids.
Barre's regime. There was an from just under 4 million to over 5 million. And as you'll have guessed, this caused issues with infrastructure and food supply, and the national humiliation of losing a war caused major discontent in Barre's regime. There was an attempted coup and a harsh crackdown that followed, in which Barre focused on certain clans. To make matters worse, Somalia's food and water supply had begun to collapse, and so it was reliant on foreign aid, which Barre only gave to clans which supported him. Over the course of the 1980s, Somalia grew worse. The economy entered freefall, and Barre's government became much more brutal in suppressing any challenge to its authority.
You want to talk about black on black crime, the Crips and Bloods? You guys are literally killing yourself over like political shit. Like, we over here, small pockets of black society are killing themselves over like goofy, gang shit. But you guys are on some political shit, kill each other. That's worse because the gang stuff can be resolved. The political stuff, nah, that's deeply rooted.
This led to growing armed resistance by the sidelined clans, and by 1990, civil war. Most of Somalia fell to the rebels pretty quickly, and by 1991, Bahrain had fled the country, never to return, and also northern lands here declared independence.
Fled the country. These dudes stay fleeing, man. And then talk shit when they flee over here. It's like, dude, fleeing is bad, right? Retreating is bad, right? Escaping a model fight. That's cowardly, right? So why you coming over here flexing like that shit cool?
Independence of the Republic of Somaliland. And whilst many clans had put aside their differences to oust Bahrain, now that he was gone, there was nothing keeping them together, and so, civil war. Again. Or still. As you all know, things didn't get much better after this. American and UN intervention did nothing to help, and Somalia's state only got worse. Law and order had completely broken down, meaning jobs that provided food were no longer safe and meant controlling aid was the quickest route to power. Meaning that Somalia was never given the opportunity to get back on its feet.
That's a lie.
I hope you enjoyed this episode and thank you for watching, with a special thanks to my patrons, James Bizanet.
Now, thank you. So you see, this is the failed state who linked up with the white man, USSR, and still took an L to Ethiopia. Like, how you link up with the white superpower and take an L? Like, that's really embarrassing, man. Okay, so what else we have? What else country we can show the truth about? Again, don't tell lies on us like you've been doing, and we won't tell the truth about you. But you've been telling lies about us. You've been saying we're lazy, we ain't do nothing. Yeah. And now we're looking at your shitty countries, these shitholes, and they don't compare to what we got over here. Okay? That's the raw truth.
Ghana was
No,
once the
no. Screw Ghana. Okay, there we go. All right, so now we're going to go into Nigeria. Okay, y'all mind we go to Nigeria? Y'all mind if we do Nigeria? Y'all mind if we do Nigeria next? It's a small clip, small video. I got a longer one, but this one going to be small.
Nigeria is in an economic crisis. The second largest economy in Africa is facing
Second largest economy in Africa is facing what?
its worst hardships in decades. Inflation has reached 30%. The cost of
inflation is at 30%.
Food is rising 35%. More than 40% of the population are living below the poverty line.
More than 40% of the population is living below the poverty line. More than 40%.
Its currency has plummeted, meaning imported goods are much more expensive. Millions of Nigerians are unable to buy food, fuel, and basic needs to survive. In a country where half the population is younger than 18, these factors are causing the worst struggles in years. Things were not too bad just a few years ago. So what exactly happened? Let us go back.
Yeah, what happened? And don't blame the white man.
To how this catastrophe.
And don't blame the government.
Started. Nigeria's modern economy began with the discovery of vast oil reserves in the 1950s, turning them into one of its largest exporters. The oil price boom in the 70s meant revenues exploded. However, corruption and unstable governments prevented Nigeria from developing into an oil giant.
And unstable governments. Now, these governments are ran by Nigerians. Ain't no white man in these governments. These are governments ran by the black Nigerians.
Over time, the nation neglected its agricultural output as people crammed into large cities and newly privatized services overtook as the leading sector. It currently accounts for 55% of its GDP, though oil still contributes 2/3 of the government's revenue. So,
in other words, if you're not selling oil in Nigeria, you're broke. You're like worse than poverty broke if you're not selling oil.
Whenever oil prices fall, its economy also falls, which was seen in the 2016 recession. Despite consistent economic growth of around 3% in recent years, the lack of diversity in its economy has led the government to rely on imports for basic goods such as food and fuel. Nigeria has long had fuel subsidies to keep fuel affordable for its citizens. However, this has been extremely costly to the government. It is a rare policy due to its inefficiency and expensive nature, but at least the people have had the benefit of cheap fuel. That was until last May, when the newly elected President Tinubu, under pressure from the IMF and World Bank, ended the subsidy program on his first day. This single action has caused the economic fallout we see today. Without any transitional plan, the end of subsidies caused a sudden shock to the system. Inflation, especially in food, has skyrocketed. The second part of Tinubu's growth plan was to depeg its currency, the naira, from the US dollar, making foreign investment more attractive. However, this has backfired.
How did that work out? Everybody want to leave the dollar. Okay, how'd that work out? It backfired, huh?
Immensely. Its value has dropped 70% against the dollar, making it almost worthless when buying foreign goods. This is
almost worthless. And they come up, that's why they be hating. You got worthless paper money in your pocket. Literally worthless. Monopoly money.
Only exacerbated the inflationary effects by making it more expensive to import the food and fuel that Nigeria relies so heavily upon. The effect on the poorest is why this is such a big deal. Half of all Nigerians are children, meaning childcare costs make up a huge portion of overall family costs. Parents are unable to provide food, electricity, and power for their children. For most Nigerians,
damn, for their children, man. Exactly, JG.
40% of whom live under the poverty line of $2 a day.
You heard that? 40% of those who live under the poverty line makes $2 per day. $2. And they're going to tell you, Stu Peace will tell you, yo, the Nigerians, they're more advanced than Black Americans. Yo, there's not one Black American in this country who's working, who's not in prison, who's working, who's not in prison, working, makes $2 a day. But this is Nigeria, where we should all want to be. $2 a day
is the worst economic hardship in their living memory. When the currency is losing its value more and more every day, it becomes harder and harder to buy the products needed. Until inflation is brought down, every day will only get harder. Thankfully, there are actions being taken to address inflation. Raising interest rates brings down prices by making borrowing more expensive, reducing the money supply. The current rate is 18%, but the Nigerian central bank is expected to raise these rates sharply, which should slowly but surely bring overall inflation down. Despite this, the government should bear responsibility for its lack of long-term planning. The reasoning behind the policies were theoretically sound. The growth rate was barely outpacing population growth. The subsidies were unsustainable and removing them would free up much needed funds. But the implementation has been a complete failure. There has been no evidence so far of using these funds for the poor. The lack of cushioning to recover from such a shock just shows Tinubu's incompetence. A phased introduction of subsidy removal would have softened the blow. Instead, he opted for shock therapy. As a result, he has thousands of protesters lining the streets to show their anger. They are asking whether they will see the promised benefits or whether the money will continue to fall into corrupt hands.
Corrupt hands, which means other Nigerians. So this is a Nigerian on Nigeria crime who's responsible for oppressing and, you know, this welfare state of Nigerians. So there's no white man. That was my point with Hassan. There's no white man with the Nigerians. They by themselves. They just can't get right.
Are also concerned that their cash could become totally worthless over the next months. A key problem here seems to be a lack of transparency and communication. Distrust between the public and government has never been higher, so future reforms and policies will likely be met with the same skepticism, particularly if they involve citizens bearing the brunt of costs. The future of Nigeria's economy hangs precariously in the balance. The current crisis, fueled by mismanagement, could ignite social unrest. Yet, within this turmoil, lies the possibility for a turning point. If the government, whether it remains or is forced out, can learn from this crisis, the seeds of recovery can be planted. Let us not forget that Nigeria is the 6th most populous country on the planet.
That's huge. Look, they up there with numbers, but remember, numbers ain't all what it is.
That is a huge amount of potential human capital. If utilized correctly, Nigeria can really become an economic dark horse.
If used correctly, that means that they're not using this thing correctly over in Nigeria.
Until then, they must navigate this turbulent near future. Thank you for watching.
Okay, so now, let's go here now. It's the last one. So let's stay with Nigeria, right? Because they like to brag about Nigeria, how it's so great, all this Wakanda shit. All right, well, come on. Look at what's going on in Nigeria.
And now let us shift our focus to West Africa, where it looks like new allegations on Nigeria's president have emerged. Reports suggest that the Central Intelligence Agency, or the CIA, has confirmed that
Before I
Nigeria's
get too far in there.
President Bola Tinubu is regarded as an active asset by the U.S. intelligence agencies.
So Nigerians are calling this guy an informant. Their president is an informant, they believe. They believe that he is an informant of the United States CIA agency. Okay, so when you done, can you play homeless videos in a cold place in USA and see who's dying on the street? Dude, I asked you. I don't know what, bro, I would love to see that video. Bro, can you please just ask for the link and phone number? And when you come on, I will search up anything you want me to do. You said there's kids in America dying on the cold streets. I will love to see that. Well, not really, but I would like to see that to see if that exists. That would be terrible. I would like to donate to a cause to prevent that. So, bro, just ask African TV, bro. Because at some point, I want to believe you. I don't know you. So if I don't know you, you get the benefit of the doubt where I believe you're just honest, right? So ask for the link or phone number. Hop on for 10, 15 minutes. That's it. You don't got to stay for the whole show. Just hop on for 10 to 15 minutes and I will pull up anything you say. You said that there are children dying in the cold. Homeless, you said homeless children. You said homeless children. Now, your name Africa TV. By that statement, no offense, but it sounds like you're in Africa. You're not over here. You said homeless children in a cold dying. Brother, I'm going to call Cap. I don't believe there's anywhere in America where a kid is homeless and is known. Because, a mom could have a homeless kid, but nobody know about it. Because we have agencies, my brother, that helps homeless kids. Okay, we got emergency, brother. Out here, they put you in emergency hotels. See, if you're not from America, you don't know. Let me tell you something, everybody. If a homeless parent or parents, it can be two or one, go to welfare, okay, a welfare office, and they speak to a social worker, and they explain, "Hey, I'm homeless with a child or two or three. I have nowhere to go. It's cold outside." 100%. Nah, I can't do never 100. 99.9%. When they leave that welfare office, they are going into a hotel at the very least. So Africa TV, this notion that there's poor homeless children in America on the streets dying in the cold, that's some shit you say when you live in Africa. Cause you remember, y'all watch movies, right? Y'all watch movies to learn about FBAs. So yeah, I think you got that from a movie, bro. You got that from the movie The Negotiator or some shit. Okay, so he says, type this. No, 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 no. I'm not going to type that. Remember, the quid pro quo is you call in or click the link and then I pull it up. But I don't pull up from the chat. I don't do that. I read the chat. But I don't obey the chat's instructions if you're not willing to have a dialogue or interact with me in real time. Okay, but listen to your president. Your president is being cited as an informant. That's deep. A president is an informant of his country. So a lot of Nigerian residents and investigators are saying that the president of Nigeria is an informant of the CIA of America.
Now, the disclosure surfaced in a joint filing by the CIA, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and the Drug Enforcement Administration. The agencies were opposing the release of the unredacted or the non-hidden information about President Tinubu's background. Now, according to the Nigerian journalist David Hundeyin, who has spearheaded the efforts for full transparency, the American agency...
Okay, so Africa TV said I don't read. So where do I say children? Brother, that's the point. Why am I reading anything? We should be talking. See, so if I misread something, I apologize. But why am I reading little ass words on a computer screen? How about you just click the link or call the phone number? Do you even speak English? And let's talk about it. That I won't have to read it. I could just hear you say it and hold you by your words.
Agency submitted a memorandum citing Tinubu's status as a CIA asset. The CIA's memorandum underscored the importance of safeguarding its intelligence partnerships.
This is
It
wild.
stated that human sources can be expected to furnish information to the CIA, and only when they are confident the CIA will do everything in its power to prevent the public disclosure of their cooperation. Now, this has sparked a huge debate about whether President Tinubu is a CIA agent or not. Now, 72...
Yo, they out there in Nigeria debating whether their president is a CIA agent. That is crazy.
2-year-old Bola Tinubu has been serving as the president of Nigeria since 2023. President Tinubu is criticized as the flying president for the frequent visits that he takes outside of his country. He had forfeited about $460,000 to the city of Illinois in the United States in 1993.
Why you do that?
After an investigation linked him to drug trafficking activities.
Wow.
But in April
But it's
of
the white
2023,
man.
Tinubu's party, the All Progressives Congress, told the Presidential Election Tribunal that he was of no interest to the U.S. government, as the 31-year-old civil forfeiture case was not against him, but against the money that they said was found in 10 bank accounts that were opened in his name. Now, this came as Tinubu's candidacy was challenged by other presidential election contenders. And now the party's claim prompted Nigerian journalist David Hundeyin and the US-based legal data website Plainsight owner Aaron Greenspan to file a Freedom of Information Act request to the FBI, the CIA, and the DEA to seek more information on the US government's interest on Bola Tinubu. Now, the DEA has also supported the CIA's position, asserting that while citizens have the right to transparency about what their government was up to, they are not entitled to unrestricted access about President Tinubu. The report confirmation triggered a mixed set of reactions on social media, with David Hundeyin claiming that the U.S. intelligence support for certain African leaders has contributed to regional instability. Now, some users on social media platform X were quick to
call him an informant. Okay, so this is the problem you have in Nigeria. Not that your economy is falling, there's no work if you're not selling oil, but now your sitting president is being accused of being a CIA agent. You know, that's not cool. If you're not aware of that. Okay, so now, for entertainment purposes only, let's cover a video. I gotta run to the bathroom.
Subscribe, Darling Radio, like and subscribe.
We got the tether. Let me get all the hostile tethers up here. We got Blood Money. He's a Nigerian tether who lives in the UK. This is Blood Money. He tries to cosplay his look as foundational Black Americans. He has a lot of jealousy of foundational Black Americans. He looks like a bootleg Travis Scott. But what's going on? How are you, Blood Money?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Yeah, I just wanted to say, Tariq, why is it that Black Americans have problems with every other group?
Well, every other group has problems with us because we help every other group. In fact, foundational Black Americans are the only ones who consistently help all of you people. Don't nobody else really help you guys. And then y'all turn around and have contempt for us. Now, why do y'all have contempt for us and we're the only ones who help you? Without being exploitive. Without being exploitive. That's the key word there. We're not exploitive. So what's that about?
Okay, but how do we have contempt for you? You're the same person that says that everyone copies your culture. So that means that we admire you. How do we have contempt for you?
Yeah, because when y'all
That's a contradiction.
y'all call up, just like the Puerto Rican, just like the other guy, y'all call into these spaces, y'all do things to undermine us, y'all have a lot of secret contempt and vitriol. You get into our political spaces and then try to undermine us. You infiltrate places like the Congressional Black Caucus, which is full of tethers who go out of their way to not do things for a foundational Black American. So that's what I mean. You do real world contemptuous things towards us, and you think for some reason we're supposed to be cool with that. What makes you think we're supposed to let that go on?
Okay, so when you say that, you're referring to like Barack Obama, Kamala Harris, etc., right?
Oh no, those are just a couple of examples, way more. Those are just big examples, but just a lot. Even you have a lot of vitriol towards foundational Black Americans. You try to hide it, but it comes out. You have a lot of contempt for us.
I have vitriol for Black Americans because every day on my TL, I'm seeing Black Americans denigrating Africans unprovoked.
That's not true. It ain't no.
That is true. You got pages dedicated to denigrating Africans.
No, sir. It's.
Do you want me to name a few?
It's people now. I don't give a. It's people responding to the vitriol that y'all been spewing for decades. We let that shit go on, and we're just not letting it go on no more. Y'all sat up here in y'all little websites and message boards, really denigrating us. Y'all would come over here and start blogs like Media Takeout, World Star, Shade Room, and go out of your way to show the underbelly of foundational Black American society, but you would always show your culture in a positive light. So y'all been doing that type of stuff for a long time. So it ain't us doing that type of shit to you. But people are checking that nonsense now, as we should. And now y'all want to cry foul that you're getting checked for that. Right?
All right, I heard that, but yeah, I just wanted to. Did you see that post about the Nigerians and the Black Americans with the Uber driver
attacking an Uber driver? What do you mean?
No, did you see the post that white guy put up about the Nigerian Uber driver saying that
yes,
yeah, you saw that, right?
I did see that.
And have you noticed that in the comments, Black Americans are trying to get approval from white people?
No, they're not.
Yeah, they are. They're literally in the comments. They're in the comments trying to denigrate Nigerians. Why? Why do you even care about what white people think of? Why do you care what white people are saying about you?
You don't get that shit straight. We don't try to get approval from them. We don't give a shit. But we're just letting folks know we're not cool with the way y'all get around white folks and start denigrating us. We don't do that. Let me tell you something about our culture. We don't get around white supremacists and denigrate Africans. We never do that because they always try to do that by talking about Africa. Look at Africa. Look how poor they are. We don't sit there cockeying and keying because we know inadvertently they're indirectly trying to shit on us too. So we don't let them do that. Y'all, on the other hand, when these white supremacists come around and start saying stuff about us, and y'all be like, "Ooh, I hate those Black American niggas, those FBAs, I hate those old lazy niggas." Y'all sit there cockeying and keying, denigrating us. So that's something very outside of our culture. We don't do that. And y'all are infamous for doing that. And that's a problem, right?
But you guys set the tone of the relationship. You guys love to shit on Africans. Yourself, you especially, you're
Nobody shits on that. Who do you think helped you guys? We're the only ones who help you without trying to exploit you. What are you talking about? Who else is helping Africa? Let's just cut to the bullshit. Who else? Who's really helping Africa outside of Africa?
we're helping ourselves.
Now, you're in Britain. You're not even helping yourself. You're getting the hell out of your homeland. Who actually helps Africa outside of Africa? Who helps Africa?
No one. But I wanted to say, how did you help Africans though?
We do. We're always doing things to help Africa. We're always trying to uplift the history. That's us who do that. The John Henry Clarks, the Azra Kwazis, our good brother, and these are some of the people who passed. Renoko Rashidi, Anthony Browder. These Foundation Americans always trying to uplift the history of Africa. Even with my films, I try to uplift the history of Africa.
So why are you denigrating us now then?
No, I'm not denigrating you. I'm not denigrating
You denigrate us every day, man. These rhetorics that you're pushing out is very delusional, and it's just
I'm not denigrating you. But what you're going to do, you're going to get a wake-up call if we try to help you, and then you turn around and try to crap on us, and I'm going to give you a gentle reminder that you're not really popping over there right now to the point where you can be sitting here pointing your finger at people. So that's not being denigrated. You're getting some straightening. You understand? I'm still cool with African folks. I'm very cool, but I ain't letting you, the Myron Gaines, and none of these other people bring your ass over here and denigrate my lineage and my people here. Those days are over. You understand?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Another thing as well, you can't really group everyone together because people like Myron Gaines, you think I like Myron Gaines? He's a Sambo.
No.
I don't like Myron Gaines. So you can't group us.
Dude, there's so many Africans who agree with that dude. I have had a ton of them from all over Africa, not just East Africa, who agree with them. They share the same anti-FBA views as Myron Gaines. There's a lot of them. And just like that Uber driver, there's a bunch of them who get around white people and say what they really feel about us, and they've been doing that for decades. And they're very ungrateful, and we done broke our backs trying to help y'all, and we ain't playing that game no more. Anyway, but thank you so much, Blood Money. I appreciate you. Yeah, man, those damn days are over. And for the post he's talking about, yeah, there's a tweet that went viral, and I'm going to read it for you, family. And I reposted it, and it went viral on my thing too. Let me read this tweet. And this tweet is from, he's a suspected white supremacist himself, by the way. This guy, hold on one second. Where we at? So this guy, he was in an Uber, this white man. Oh, where we at? Okay, well, how come my thing ain't loading? Okay, there we go. All right, so his tweet is, I asked my Nigerian Uber driver yesterday if Americans were friendly. He said almost everyone was. Then he went on a 20-minute tirade about Black Americans, how badly they treated him, and he didn't want to live by them or do business with them. And they are the rudest people he'd ever encountered. In his words, quote, if I get 10 Nigerians together in America, I guarantee at least 9 of us have degrees. I have 3 degrees. I was not poor in Nigeria. I come here to work a basic job. I'm fine with this. We must start somewhere. You're born in this country, your entire life is here, but you cannot get a degree? You cannot work? What is wrong with you to act this way? I'm going to buy a house and live far away from them, meaning Foundation of Black Americans, in a better neighborhood than where I live now. So he's up here cacan and kikiing with this suspected white supremacist denigrating us, talking that Prince of Zamunda shit. They always pull that Prince of Zamunda. I'm not poor in Nigeria. I got all this money. I'm a Nigerian prince, but I'm over here working a basic job. I have to pretend to be poor. Okay, stop. So a lot of people were chiming in on this discussion. And let's be real, that type of mindset from them, that's been around for a minute. They've had that mindset for a minute. This real vitriolic mindset towards foundational Black Americans. They've been on that. Now, family, thank goodness for Uber and rideshare apps now, because remember, family, y'all know decades ago in cities like New York, DC, a lot of those East Coast cities, where foundational Black Americans, we couldn't get cabs. Y'all remember those days? So we don't have that problem now because we got ride sharing. But remember when we could not get cabs as foundational Black Americans in places like New York? I would go to New York all the time back before the ride sharing apps. And I'd go out there in the winter and I'd be out there freezing for like 20, 30 minutes waiting on a damn cab while the cabs would drive past me to get to the white people. It was them tethers driving them cabs. You understand what I'm saying? It was them damn tethers driving them cabs, ladies. And let's be real, it was them driving them cabs doing that old shit. They've been doing little stuff like that for years. Yeah? They've been, well, the excuse was we don't want these niggas to rob us because we got robbed by niggas before. Yeah, whatever. But sometimes we be out there with our families. You know, the family ain't gonna rob you. They'd leave us in the cold. They were doing that stuff for the longest. So yeah, they've always had that little vitriolic relationship or disposition towards us. Let's keep it a buck. A lot of them have. Let's get Brother Ani Asaru in the building. Brother Ani, what's up, sir? Brother Ani, where you at?
What's going on, brother?
I'm good, man. How are you?
Doing pretty good. You're absolutely right. You hitting on everything tonight. And also what that other tether said about Fat Joe and all the way up, that came out of 2016. But he needed our energy. He needed Remy Ma. He needed the energy of FBA on that song. So we need to highlight everything that he ever did that really blew up. Most of the things he did was because of foundational Black American energy, and I'll land on that.
Yes. Yep. So yeah, all the way up. That was damn near a decade ago. Like I said. All right. Let's get on. What's this person's name? Tawanga. Let's get Tawanga in the building. Tawanga. All right. I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. Tawanga, hop in.
Hello, my brother. How are you?
I'm good, Tawanga. How are you?
I'm good too.
Where you from?
I'm Senegal.
You're from Senegal. Okay.
Yes, and actually, I live in Kenya.
You live in Kenya. Okay. So what's on your tonight, man?
Man, all good. I heard everything you said. And sorry, by the way, I speak French, so my English is not that good, but I'm gonna try and speak with you.
It's good.
All right. So you see, in Africa, we don't hate African Americans. I can guarantee you that when you go to Senegal, when you go to Kenya, and everywhere in sub-Saharan Africa, 99% of people you're gonna encounter are really nice people. They don't talk shit about African Americans. They're really nice, and we don't hate you guys. Seriously.
I agree. They're very nice people over there. I've been all over Africa. Most of the people I met were very nice people. They were very good people. The problem we have is that, and Dr. John Henry Clark talked about this too. He said a lot of folks leave Africa, come to the West, and start playing these little goofy games, and that's the problem. A lot of the Sambos start coming over here with that bullshit, or they go to the Western nations and then they start trying to get brand new and act like they didn't come from a place that was struggling, and then try to point their fingers at us. That's when we got a problem, because we're not going to, denigrate nobody because they're struggling. Because again, we go over there and we try to help. I've helped so many African nations. The problem is the ones who leave, They have
Yes,
like,
I really agree.
yeah, they have a contempt for their home, and then they have contempt for us because we're in our home and we're standing on home and lineage business. So they kind of feel a certain way about that. So they try to bring us down a peg by wagging their finger, like, what about black on black crime, nigga? And then we have to gently remind them, dude, you left a crime ridden place. Now don't let us get on you. So that's what we're doing. We're just getting some straightening. We're just getting some straightening. But we ain't got no problem with the brothers and sisters over there. Shout out to you guys. We just want folks to build things up and get things popping so we can go visit and be comfortable when we go visit. That's all we're saying. All right. Let me see. Shout out to everybody in here. All right, we're in here heavy. Let's get Noisy B in the building. Noisy B in the building. Well, we're in here heavy. Eh? There's a lot of people in here. Noisy B, what's up, brother? Noisy B, what's happening?
What's good? What's good, Terry? Yeah, I just came up in regards to that Sheena Cardo
Yeah.
dude.
Oh, wait. Get those headphones out. Those earphones, that earpiece is very janky. Let's get that off.
Yeah, hold on.
Yeah. That earpiece is not the business, brother. You need to send that back to Timu. Send them back and get your $8 back. All right. All right, Noisy, you good?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Much better. Much better. All right. So you
In regards to Giancarlo, yeah, don't mind him. Don't worry about him or anything. He's low-class immigrant who got kicked out of both countries he immigrated to. First, he tried immigrating to the UK, then he got kicked out of there and immigrated to America. Yeah, me and Davinsky just learned that a few days.
Wow.
Yep. Yeah, so he's a super tether.
Oh, not the super tether. He's a tether with super tether powers.
Yep.
He can make Goya from scratch in less than 2 seconds. Okay, he's a super tether.
Yeah.
But thank you so much. Thank you. All right.
The traditional notion of a nonviolent civil rights movement is what we've all been kind of raised with. But you bring that notion to kind of a standing still halt here, and you're an example. How do you, why don't we know about people like you? Why don't we know about the deacons? I mean, I know about the deacons, but why do we know so little about that?
Well, that's intentional. They didn't want minorities to get the impression that that was a way of dealing with some of the problems. And that's the way countries all over the world deal with problems. But they didn't want us to get the idea. They wanted us also to feel inferior, less than men, because they know that men will stand up and fight, that men will fight for their rights and for their families and for their homes, in defense of their homes. But we were supposed to be less than men. The next thing is that what is not commonly known is that the deacons of self-defense from Monroe, Louisiana, and also that all of the radical groups, even SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, the Panthers, they all got their inspiration from Monroe. That's documented in my FBI files. But nobody wanted to say this. They didn't want to give us credit for this type of thing. The next thing is that you have the situation of other groups that's resorted to some form of violence, lost people. It's like a situation in Chicago where they broke into the house with the Panthers sleeping and they just wiped out a number of them. But we never lost anybody. That some of our people shot other people and a policeman claimed he was shot, but we didn't lose not a single person. So this was our Mount Vernon. Now what do I mean by Mount Vernon? As a child, we learned in school that George Washington led a ragtag army against the greatest army in the world, the British Army, an empire that the sun never set on his flag. So he led this ragtag army. He overcame the oppression of the British throne. He became president of the United States. Then he went home to Mount Vernon and lived out the rest of his life as a peaceful country farmer gentleman. That was the Mount Vernon that they teach in school, especially to white children, that you might resist tyranny and you might still survive. But for us, we had no Mount Vernon. They wanted to show us, if you resist white tyranny, white oppression, you will die like other people. Can you imagine an 8-year-old child traveling with his mother, and he says, "Mother, that street, that school is Malcolm X, or that's the Harry T. Moore, or that's the Martin Luther King High School. Mother, what happened to them? What happened to Reverend King, this great man of peace who loved his people?" And she got to tell him, "Son, he was murdered." Mother, why was he murdered? He was murdered because he loved justice. He wanted justice for his people. Well, Malcolm X, what happened, Mother? Same thing. Harry T. Moore, he was murdered because he wanted justice for his people. And there's a long list of that. Now, can you imagine a child, a young boy, when you tell him that? What is it? What is the psychological impact in his head? Oh, if I follow that course, I must be ready for suicide. And that course is death. There's no Mount Vernon for me. And so this is why our Mount Vernon, they don't want the people to know about it. And so this is why a man like the President of the United States, who would be against civil rights, would also sign for a Martin Luther King holiday. I think a Martin Luther King holiday is all right, and I'm for it. But I don't jump up and shout because we got it, because I know the meaning behind it. The meaning is that once a year, every black child in America is reminded that they shot this great man down like a dog on the streets of Memphis. Shot him down like a dog. What did they shoot him for? Because he was seeking justice for his people. You see, when you, and just like Medgar Evers, same thing. Now, that's not going to encourage a child, a young boy, to stand up. He doesn't want to be like somebody who was slaughtered like a dog. But if you can say, oh, Mount Vernon, you know, George Washington went to Mount Vernon and lived out his day. Well, that's a chance. Just like when, if they should come in here to draft us now for the armed services, we go hoping that we'd be back. But if the man came and say, look, you go kiss your wife and your neighbors and everybody goodbye, all of it, go kiss your loved ones, because you won't be coming back. Do you think you'd be drafted into the armed services? No. No, you would never stand for that. In fact, we'd kill him before he got out of here. So that's not the type of thing that's really conducive to resistance on our part. But as a result, I was able to overcome that by analyzing these situations and observing what they were doing. And the Marine Corps, even though they put me out, I learned more from them than any place else. Because the way they operated, the way they dealt in fear, all kinds of things. So when I got control of the NAACP, the organizer, I appointed these veterans. I knew that veterans had been trained to do things if they had the leadership. But the only thing was missing was the leadership. So we got 200 people under arms, and these men fought the Klan. And they didn't show a bit of fear, not a bit. And sometimes I found out how deep this feeling is running with some young people. Sometimes at night the guys would sit around and they would say, Brother Rob, do you think they're coming tonight? And I would say, no. And they would say, why aren't they coming? I said, because we're here. That's why they're not coming. Because we had dug foxholes, we had steel helmets, we introduced the first Molotov cocktails to the freedom movement. And they had all kind of military equipment, sandbags we had put up. And I would say, well, the reason they're not coming...
Did they ever come, Mr. Williams?
Yeah, they did come once, but they didn't get in. Oh, well, there was a shootout. And they left there running from the black community. The problem was that 18 black women had been struck on the streets with objects from cars that white men were passing throughout these objects. So the black people, ministers, had been up and they were begging the officials to stop these people from making these forays into our community. And officials told the black ministers that they had as much right for the Klan to organize as for our communist NAACP. So we asked the preachers, please don't go back anymore, we'll take care of it. So they had struck 18 women, so finally we got our rifle club. I got a charter from the National Rifle Association. I had been in the Marine Corps and I found out that civilians could get charters. We got a charter. We dressed up the occupations that made them think that we were white people. Just like a cook became a restaurateur, and a brick mason became a construction owner, and we just changed the occupations and they gave us a charter, and we had the parent charter for that county from National Rifle Association. So that gave us the right also to get some of the arms that we used. So as a result, after we had arms and had disciplined the group, then out in the county, a white man attempted to rape a black woman who was 8 months pregnant. And there was her neighbor, who was a white woman, had brought her to the police to help to try to get an indictment against the man who tried to rape her. And the chief of police refused to give a warrant, so we had to get involved with the NAACP. And as a result, then some of the men in the community said, well, suppose we take care of this, they're not going to do anything. And I explained to them that they couldn't take care of it. They said, well, we could just go by his house and sprinkle maybe a few machine gun bullets. And said, no, you can't do that. So we just scared him. No. Then they said, well, we could throw a stick of dynamite on his porch, couldn't we? No. So I said, he'll be taken care of in the law. So what they did, there was a young white woman lawyer from New York who volunteered to come and prosecute this man. She came all the way to North Carolina. And when they came up for trial, she never got a chance to say anything on the floor because they had brought this white man's wife, and they set her down at his side in the court. And his attorney got up and said, Judge, Your Honor, this man is not guilty of any crime. He was just drinking and having a little fun. Now, you see this lovely creature? God's pure flower, God's greatest gift to man, this lovely flower, this lovely white woman, that these people are going to come in here and have you to believe that that man left God's greatest gift to him for this? Talking about the black woman. So, that was all. The white woman lawyer volunteer didn't even get a chance to say a word in the court. Didn't even get a chance, and the judge dismissed. So, then all the women in the courtroom, they had packed the courtroom, and they turned to me and they said, if it hadn't been for you, that man would have been punished. Now you open the floodgates on us. They feel that they can do anything they want to us with impunity. Now what are you going to say? And I said, I'm going to say from this day forward, we will meet violence with violence. We will become our own judges, our own prosecutors, and our own executioners. And that's what we'll do from now on. And so they had to take the man out of the back door of the courthouse. They couldn't bring him through the crowd of black women who had congregated there. And it just happened the man was there from the United Press International, and he heard me say that. And that night they flashed that. He called me back at midnight and he wanted to know, say, you had time to cool off. I've got a statement you made today. Before I send it out on the wire, I'd like to know, do you stand behind that statement? I said, yeah, I stand behind that statement. If you call me back 6 years from now, I'll still stand behind it. And they sent it out all over the country. Next day, just like the world was on fire. And people were calling from everywhere, all kinds of things. Roy Wilkins got on the telephone, and he was calling me from the New York office of NAACP, and he says, Williams, you made a statement today, and that's a bad statement. And what we want to do, we want to bring you to New York, and they're going to put you on the network and give you a chance to apologize to white America for what you've said. And I said, well, if white America's going to apologize to me first for what they've done to us, I'll apologize to them. He said, no, you have to apologize because they're associating you with the NAACP. I said, well, when I was having all that problem, you didn't feel that we were inseparable? And he said, no, you got to go. I said, no, not unless they apologize. You tell them if they apologize to me. Finally, they told my lawyer, who was Conrad Lynn, over in New York, had an office in New York. They called him. He was a volunteer lawyer. And they told Conrad, said, Conrad, we want you to call Williams and tell him that if he will get up and apologize to white America, we'll make him the biggest Negro leader in the United States. And I asked Conrad, said, what did you say? What do you want to say about that? I said, you tell him. I said, go to hell. And he said, oh, I've already told him that because I knew that's what you were going to say. But that's the way it started to, and then the press started to scream across the country and the media, mass media, that I had even advocated the indiscriminate slaughter of white babies in their cradle. So this all ties in of why you've not heard about Monroe, because there was a conspiracy out there to keep this quiet and not to let people know that it was effective. Now, it was picked up overseas. They picked it up in Cuba, they picked it up in China, they picked it up in Africa, and this is how I got to be known in places like China and Cuba, because this was picked up. And those people didn't believe in turning the other cheek. So to them, at last, they saw the possibility of some manhood developing among the black struggle in the United States. But they have done a lot of things to keep it quiet, to keep it out of the history. And now they're beginning, more and more, it's beginning to creep out. Now they've got what they call the Robert Williams Collection at the University of Michigan, and scholars are beginning to dig into this, and it's going to prove embarrassing to a lot of historians of how they missed so much history in this movement.
Would you say anything different today? Would you change anything?
No, I wouldn't change. You see, part of the problem I'm looking at now, we've got all of this ghetto problem and violence and drugs. Now, we never used drugs. We thought that's what show people used, the musicians. We felt high on just resisting, of standing for what was right. And that gave us our high, and we felt great about that. And the situation of violence. They brought all kinds of money into the South, new station wagons, buildings, to establish nonviolent workshops, to convert black people to nonviolence. But today we've got more violence than we've ever had, and I don't know of any workshop, nonviolent workshops, because the violence is ingrown. It's being unleashed against ourselves. So nobody cares about that kind of violence. It's only a great moral issue when other races are involved and it may be on the receiving end. So the problem is, we had, in our community, we had some turf problems. The young guys, teenagers from one side of town didn't allow the guys, the young teenagers from my side of town. And they had these fights going on all the time. And the problem was, I found out they didn't have any direction. And after we got them involved in civil rights. We started picketing the swimming pool. Swimming pool had been constructed by the federal government, but they barred blacks from it with federal money. We started that. We started all kinds of demonstrations. And pretty soon these groups came together. And when they got direction, they stopped fighting each other and they turned their wrath toward the power structure. And this is why even at this time, they don't want the youth to have any kind of direction that may be positive. And they talk about turning the other cheek and what happened back then. But the youth need to know about the situation now. And they're not about to turn the other cheek, so that we don't even need to mention that. But this is why these things have been camouflaged, they've been omitted, they've attempted to rewrite history. But eventually this will come out, and it's nothing like people have been taught.
In your experience, what made a person, a man or a woman, what made them step out from the crowd and say, I won't take this anymore? Is it a special kind of individual? What does it take?
No, it's primarily leadership. Primarily leadership. I remember I was in a church meeting. They had what they call a civic league. And there was a preacher there, we call him an Uncle Tom. And he was always selling out to the money interest. And at that time, that was a dry county, and they were trying to bring in alcohol. And alcohol companies had paid him to push for a vote. Nobody dared to challenge the man because he was a strong preacher. And so in this church meeting, he was saying that somebody spread the rumors that I've taken some money from the beer company. And he said, but nobody will get up and tell you that, will dare to tell. Well, I hadn't thought anything about it, but then it just struck me because I had been working in the lawyer's office when the company brought the money. And it just struck me then, even though I was alone. And I got up and I said, yes, Reverend Johnson, I was there when they brought the money. Yeah, I'll say that, yeah, you took some money from the beer. And he told me to get out of the church. He said, get out, leave. So he put me out of the church. But as I was walking out one door, I looked on the other side, and there was a young doctor, young Catholic doctor, black guy, and he was coming out too. So he got out and walked when I did, and then 2 or 3 other people. Then the next day, the deacons of the church came, and they said, Williams, we want you to tell us the truth. Is that the truth? I said, yeah. They said, that's all we want to know. Next meeting, they said, told the preacher, said, step down. And then more and more people started coming like that. But it's a matter that somebody must show some determination and must show some guts. You see, nobody wants to be the first one. Then they're looking to see what will happen to you. And this is why they've always in the South made an example out of the black who will stand up. Because if they make an example out of him, they can keep the status quo.
Now, you mentioned FBA a couple times.
Yeah.
This is a term that I think I first heard about this term maybe 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a book or an ebook about?
Yeah, I got a book. Yeah, I got a book. Well, I got a book really talking about my experiences. It's called Foundational Black American Race Beta.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about this term. Where did it come from and what inspired that book?
The term Foundational Black American, I really got that term from Claude Anderson. I'm a big student of Claude Anderson, and I would chop it up with him, not just in my movies, but I would have him on my podcast, and he would talk about how unique Native Black Americans are. He would use the term Native Black Americans, and he would talk about how unique we are as far as our lineage. We are a unique group, which is true. And I started using the term Native Black American, but sometimes that term would confuse people because they thought, well, do you mean a Cherokee who's mixed with black? Do you mean a Choctaw who's mixed with black? So that term would be somewhat confusing. So I said, let's do another term. Let's tighten that term up so that there won't be any confusion. So foundational instead of native, because black people, we are the founders of this nation, meaning we're the foundation. We built this nation from scratch.
So
White people couldn't even say that they did that. But
you changed that term?
yeah, I did.
Okay.
Yeah, I came up with the term foundational Black American based on native Black American from Claude Anderson.
Wow, that's deep.
Yeah.
It's been taken off. You know, I go on Clubhouse and there's these really interesting debates between foundational Black Americans and Black immigrants from Africa and the Caribbean. And it gets a little nasty sometimes.
It does get nasty, yeah.
And it's sometimes a little offensive. Me being that I have roots, my roots are in the Caribbean, but my roots also go to slavery. In fact, I could trace my roots to the actual name of the slave that is a descendant on my dad's side, named Julian Alonso, who was a runaway slave from an island called Curacao. Not too many people can name the person in their family who was that slave. So I feel like my history and my background is very similar to foundational Black Americans, but there's this divide now. And I think maybe the divide, some people saying the divide is becoming more severe because of you.
No, well, that's a cop-out because that's a projection. Let's be very clear. The divide has always come from the immigrant class. Always. We have been the only ones welcoming them in as brothers and sisters and saying, hey, you black like me, we all black. The minute many of people from the immigrant class, they do something constructive, they go out of their way to distance themselves from us. So if they go get a PhD, well, I'm a Nigerian American, man. I'm the first Nigerian American with a PhD. All right, I mean, good for you, brother. If they win a track meet or whatever, oh, they're the first Ghanaian American, they go out of their way. This woman who's the spokesperson at the White House, they made a big deal about it. Well, she's the first Haitian American. She's Haitian. She's a Haitian American. They go out of their way when it's constructive. When a motherfucker rob a liquor store and he's Haitian or he's black, if somebody go rapes 18 women, oh, he's Nigerian, but he's black. He's black.
So whose fault is that, though? It's not.
That's theirs and the white people too. That's theirs and the white
I
people
would say
too.
it's white media.
Yeah, and them. They do that shit too.
Well, they do it when it's to affirm some success.
Yeah. No, but you black when you want to dump your trash on us. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I don't want nobody's fucking trash. I don't want nobody's trash. If we're gonna be different when it's positive, be different when it's negative. Don't just be black when it's negative, and then we get the stigma for it. In New York right now, there's a lot of crimes against Asian people. The people just running up, hitting Asian people in the head in New York for no reason. We did the research. Many of these people are immigrants. These are not FBAs doing that. We look at the background of these people. We're seeing a lot of these people are not even FBA. But we get the stigma. So when the stop and frisk comes, I'm getting hemmed up because of what this motherfucker just did. We're saying enough is enough. If we're going to be all one group, let's be all one group. Since you're making it clear that we're different, we're going to be different all across the board. And we have a different, unique lineage, and that's okay. We celebrate everybody's unique lineage. They just had West Indian Day Parade out there in New York. Wonderful thing, celebrate that. Nobody has a problem when everybody else wants to celebrate their lineage. We have a lineage. We have a unique lineage here as Foundational Black Americans. We want to celebrate and acknowledge that. That's not divisive. That's what everybody else is doing.
So what is the solution? Because there's no way.
There's not a problem for there to be a solution. See, that's not a problem. Us acknowledging our lineage is not a problem. You don't need a solution for a problem that doesn't exist. Everybody should just say, hey, look, we celebrate your uniqueness as a foundational Black American. The problem is when we do something constructive, instead of giving us credit for it, other people want to start getting credit for it, and that's the problem.
Ghana was once the shining star of Africa.
South Sudan is the youngest country in the world and, according to World Bank, also one of the poorest. After split with Sudan in 2011, South Sudan was viewed as a country with big potential, and from the beginning it looked like this country is on economy upswing, but then something happened and everything went downhill since then. So today I will show you the reality of this economic downfall. There are many documentaries on YouTube that describe civil war in South Sudan, but just to remind everyone, South Sudan was fighting because of, as you can see, population is split within the nation into Dinka tribe and Nau tribe. This guy is the president, but at the same time he represents Dinka tribe, and in addition he also wears this cool hat. Spoiler alert, he is not so cool. And this is the vice president who represents people of Nur tribe, without cool hat. Spoiler alert, he's also not cool. Last spoiler alert, I'm also not cool, but at least I don't kill people. But we are here for the economic, so let's begin. Economic implications of this war are ginormous even to this day. Firstly, we need to understand that this country's economy is over-relying on one single commodity, and that's the oil, which is over 90% of country's export. Just for the comparison, Sudan is a little bit more diversified with other natural resources. On the other hand, South Sudan is one of the most oil-dependent countries in the entire world, with 98% of government's annual operating budget and 80% of its GDP derived from oil. This strong link of country's economy towards only one commodity means that it's very volatile, and when the commodity is selling for a lot of money, well, the country will get a lot of money. But when prices start to fall down, also the income dramatically shrinks. This same effect we could also see in the fall of Venezuela's economy. But with prices falling down, country can extract more oil when they have the capacity to do so and sell more of the oil for lower prices, but still creating at least some income, right? Well, here's the catch. When the civil war erupted, the oil production was hit severely, and it meant that in some places extraction of oil was completely postponed, which had a horrible effect on South Sudan's budget. We don't need to be experts to know that countries during war will spend significant amount of their budget on war-related expenses like soldiers, guns, ammunition, and even further neglecting important things like improving infrastructure, education, or healthcare. The worst part is that South Sudanese were fighting against their own citizens. But war is hurting economy on many different fronts. Besides obviously killing its own populations, millions of citizens were forced to leave their villages, leaving behind their houses, businesses, and already established agricultures. Those were communities, and they were established on certain locations, which included many small businesses. As we already know, small businesses are a big bone of every country's economy, especially if country is still relying on agriculture so much. Without this production, the citizens of South Sudan are relying nearly only on foreign help. Ongoing wars in countries also leads to massive migration waves. Just look at the widely covered migration caused by war in Syria. But South Sudanese people are not even looking for the economically strongest country to migrate into. They are migrating to Uganda, which also occupies the bottom part of nearly every single economy index. Now, the next big problem is, in my opinion, super underestimated by many reporters and even some economists. In many cases, this killing and migration will eventually cause massive brain drain from this country, which will impact the country in near future. Many highly skilled workers and educated people were first to realize how horrible it is to be caught in middle of civil war, and were one of the first to leave the country. When the countries after war will have finally peace, do you think majority of those highly skilled and educated people will just come back after migrating into different country and having already established families and businesses in their new country? Of course not. Long wars can lead to the fact that the young people won't be skilled enough to operate computers or even read or write, but rather will be able to operate RPG-7 bazookas. Just to add fuel to those problems, what is the other problem with having war in your country? Well, black markets. During war times, it's very common that black market starts taking over. In those times, nearly every part of economy is relying only on the black market, from buying absolute necessities to things like petroleum to the car, are almost always purchased only on black markets. Now, some people can be like, yes, but isn't it important that the money are moving, are not just standing on one place in form of saving under someone's bed? And yes, theoretically it is good that people are still using money and buying things, but the problem is that obviously nobody is paying taxes on income from black market, so the government simply cannot collect a lot of money from those taxes, which will lead to draining other source of income for this government. But I know what you may be thinking now. Why don't they just issue government bonds to raise some money and build good infrastructure that will ensure better prosperity also in the future? Well, here is the other catch. Government bonds are technically sold to everyone, but not many people or even corporations are going to invest into this country that was hit severely by civil war and inflation rates are sky high. Those investors are more likely to invest in more secure bonds from the stable countries. One of the main signs of good stable country is their leaderships and people in power. But in South Sudan, you will unfortunately meet only corruption. These have giant effect on every single part of South Sudan's economy. Good chunk of government money can be relocated on offshore accounts. When you have country wealthy on natural resources, like oil, in some cases like Norway, it can mean drastically higher public services, building better infrastructure, getting better education and healthcare to all citizens by investing it wisely to ensure prosperity of the country even after non-renewable resources like oil will be drained. But this was the process, and this stability was also ensured by mainly not corrupted behavior from the government. To prove my point, let's look at the Norway on this chart. This is Corruption Perception Index for year 2019, where country blessed with oil was able to rank at the 7th place. And where is South Sudan, also blessed with natural resources? It is right there, on the 2nd worst place on this index. Many of those poor countries that has the natural resource wealth, this doesn't end up being reinvested into the country's much needed education, healthcare or even infrastructure, because now South Sudan has about 10,000 kilometers of roads, but just 2% of them paved. Electricity is produced mostly by costly diesel generators, and indoor plumbing and access to water are scarce. In addition to that, less than 2% of population has access to electricity. With this corruption, this wealth is not used to fix those problems, but rather those funds are being relocated to another offshore accounts belonging to people in power. This means that those countries are not able to escape this infinite loop of poorness, and when they were given hope of escaping in form of natural resources, those funds are being used to support only the elite and finance the military to ensure the current ruler can still be in power and steal even more money. The good system in place is like the skeleton to good economy. If you look at this index again, we can clearly see the correlation between wealthy and successful nations and their ranking in this index. But economic prosperity of the country is not only based on factors that can be influenced by them, like education, taxation or non-corruption, but there are also factors that cannot be influenced by any country, like amount of natural resources or geographic location. As we can see, South Sudan after split lost not only part of its country, but the part that has direct access to Red Sea, and had much better trade routes than landlocked country like South Sudan now. To illustrate how big of an influence this had on South Sudan, we can compare their exports. Here we can see the country with direct access to the Red Sea and how relatively big portion of it Saudi Arabia. And here is the landlocked South Sudan, whose main and only trading partner is China. This situation is also influenced by trade embargo placed on this country by the USA. South Sudan's oil is exported through a pipeline that runs to refineries and shipping facilities at Port Sudan on the Red Sea. This means that the economy of South Sudan will remain even after the split heavily linked to Sudan for some time, giving the existing oil infrastructure. But the sun is starting to shine at least a little bit on this country. The civil war officially ended on February 2020, and well, they were from their local cries just into other, but now world cries. This will impact most countries negatively, and South Sudan will be definitely one of them. They won't be impacted only by this, but also by this. At the time of South Sudan's ending war, their biggest asset in form of large oil fields are being highly impacted by super low oil prices. Foreign investments will more likely come from places like China rather than places like the USA, and we will just need to wait to see how South Sudan will handle this situation and hope for millions of people living in this country and come out of this better than now. In my next video we will take a deeper look on one of the most underrated and forgotten economy powerhouses, so if you would like to see that video as well, consider